All right, we back with another one. Today we got Mister the Phil Wolf of Wheeleri. What's all the nicknames, man?
I don't know, man. I'm just Phil. I'm
So
just
why don't you
Phil.
go ahead and tell us your herp origin story?
And much like anybody else, you start off as a kid, you like dinosaurs. At least my generation, you like dinosaurs, and then you realize that there's living ones, and you become enamored as a kid, and you watch as much Austin Stevens and Crocodile Hunter as you can, and of course Mark O'Shea, and then you get a little older, and mom lets you get a leopard gecko, and my mom was anti-snake, and I was always enamored with snakes. Snakes were like my thing, and the books and the toy rubber snakes from the zoo and everything I could get my hands on. But no snakes, no snakes. When you're 18 and you have your own place, you can do whatever you want, and it's like, oh, look what you did now. Look what you did, mom. Jesus. But I mean, that's really it. I was lucky that right out of high school, excuse me, I was going to community college, and I was working at a local pet shop. And you guys have heard of underground reptiles. And
Yep.
I was going to underground reptiles at least once a week just to get crickets from my leopard gecko. And I had friends that worked there. And then some of my friends that worked there, they went opening up their own reptile shops. Like, obviously I'd go and hang out with them. And then you get out of high school. I was like 18 and just hanging out with all these people. And they're like, oh, you should go work underground. I was like, no, I don't know enough to work underground. And I mean, no slight against underground, but like, it's it's a store like any other. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they got a lot of cool stuff, but like, you can't be afraid to take the jump, right? So I went in there and applied for a job, and the owner had known me since I was like 14. So he's like, dude, there's no interview. You're hired. Like, let's go. So I worked the retail store just as like cricket boy for a while, and then I started making friends with people, and I was opening the store. And at the time, they had a little venomous corner in the back, and everything was locked up. And at the time, didn't have any aspirations to venomous snakes at all. I thought it was cool. I was intrigued by them, but like it wasn't like my thing. And I was 18. What did I know? And one of the guys who was opening stores with me, he's like, "Hey man, if you ever get here and God forbid something gets loose, you need to have some kind of general knowledge as to how to handle some of this stuff." He's like, "Why don't you come? We do this class twice a week for guys to get their hours for the state license. Why don't you come and take some hours? You don't got to really commit to it, but at least get an idea of what's going on, how to use a snake hook, for crying out loud." So I said, okay. And long story long, I got hooked, man, pun intended. And I became enamored and obsessed with venomous. And I wound up teaching that class for just over 10 years. And through that time, I wound up leaving underground. I worked for Strictly Reptiles for a while. I worked for a couple other import-export guys for a while, and just learning as much as I could. And during the last maybe 6 or 7 years or so of teaching that class, I kind of fell out of reptiles. Like, I still had my pet stuff, but I wasn't like immersed in it, right? And like, podcasts were a thing and social media was a thing, but it really wasn't as amazing as we have it now. You know what I mean? Like, our hobby has, I've heard you guys talk about it countless times. Our hobby, our community has just exploded into this awesome thing. Like, we compare ourselves to the bird people, and we compare ourselves to the dog and cat people, and like how much more we have to go with the fish people, and like how much ahead of us they are. But like, but dude, we're climbing. We're with them. We're learning from them. We're adding to their stuff. So, and I was like, you know what? Let me find a podcast, right? And I found this one called the Herpetoculture Podcast. I said, man, this looks good. It's these two guys, Justin and Jake, like they got good heads on their shoulders. They seem to know what they're talking about. Let me this a little bit. And I went up reaching out to the Instagram account for the podcast, and I was talking to Justin, and him and I got chummy, and we're like, oh, you like cigars? I like cigars. Hey, I'm going to the Daytona Reptile Expo this year. Haven't been in like, I don't know, almost 6 years. Oh, really? I'm going too. Let's have a cigar. Let's hang out. And it just snowballed from there. So now we have the Herpetoculture Network with, geez, I think we're up to 6 shows, I think, now on this podcast network.
You guys got a lot.
Yeah. And
me and cool.
Thanks. And Justin and I have our Snakes and Stogies, which is our weekly live show every Monday night, where we jibber jabber about cigars and tobacco for I don't know, 10 minutes, if that. And the rest of the time we talk about all the stuff that scales and, creepy crawlies. So,
Yeah.
and that's a real quick synopsis of me in reptiles real quick. I don't know if that was too long-winded or not, but
No, you're good. So I mean, speaking of THN, right?
yeah.
So I mean, you guys been doing it for a while. So do you guys? Is it just off the top of the dome, or do you guys actually have a little script or a little kind of idea of what you guys will talk about every week?
So sometimes I'll be brutally honest, man. Smitty, we call him Smitty, Justin Smith,
Yep.
just because there's so many Justins, Smitty and I, we do a lot off the cuff. I won't lie. There's plenty of times where it's just we know it's going to be just a one-on-one episode, just us hanging out talking, and it's a very
Yeah.
chill show. It's a very live viewer interactive show. A lot of our friends chime in. There's a live group chat that we can interact with everyone, throw comments up on the screen, and it all simulcasts live to YouTube and Facebook. A lot of times we have no idea what we're going to talk about, and we just wing it, right? Just
Best way to do it.
Fuck it, we'll do
Yeah.
it live, as they say. And other times, for the most part, if we have a bona fide guest, we'll have some kind of outline as to like basically what you sent me a day or two ago, saying, hey, this is what we're
Okay.
going to do, this is what we'd like to do, let's expand upon that. And it's worked out really well for us. And there's always going to be, I don't want to be insulting and say like a higher profile guest, you know what I mean? And for those people, you may want to have more questions and be able to expand on those questions in greater detail, or a more acute or finely tuned question. But
Yeah.
we try and just keep it casual and off the cuff as best we can. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. Trust me, I've been listening to you guys for a very long time, and I was
thanks,
just like,
man.
man, are they just going off the top of the dome with this stuff, or do they have an idea of what's going on? Or I
A
mean,
lot
because
of the
a
time.
lot of the stuff you guys talk about, it's like, man, I didn't even think about that, but it's a good ass question.
Thank you, man.
How
Thank
some of
you.
the greatest ideas come up just in conversation.
Yeah.
Kicking around ideas, and
Yeah. And
you're relaxed. It's a very organic environment that you guys create. I love it. It's not
Thank you.
fake. It's not. It's just guys talking about what they love, man. I mean, it's awesome, man. It's very unique. It's very, it's refreshing. Super refreshing.
Thank you so much. You're making me blush, guys. I love it. And it's so cool that you'd said like very off the cuff, and I guess the real point of Snakes and Stogies, specifically that show, was Smitty and I were talking on the phone, I don't know, 2-3 times a week, just bullshitting about our animals, life, music, bands, whatever. And we're like, hey man, we're actually talking about, like, not to sound cocky, but we're talking about stuff that I know other people would want to chime in on, or would want to hear our thoughts on it, and we would want to hear their thoughts. So let's do a show, and nobody's really doing at the same time. And Eric Burke's gonna hate me if he hears this, but I don't remember who came first, if it was Carpets and Coffee or if it was Snakes and Stogies. But like that concept of an adult vice that's not quote unquote bad, right? Coffee, cigars, not the worst vices you could have, that have their own expanded universe, right? Their own world, okay? And our reptile stuff. Let's just blend them together, right? Or like Pauly Shore said, just make them interweave,
It works. It really works.
Cool, man. Yeah.
If you were at a cigar lounge or even like a whiskey bar and you were sitting down with your buddies, what would you be talking about? What you're drinking, what you're smoking, what you do for fun, right? You don't want to talk about work. Who wants to talk about work? Who wants to talk about, their wives? I mean, you want to sit down and talk about what makes you smile, man. What brings you joy in life. Not that our wives don't, but you get what I'm saying.
No, of course.
It's just,
absolutely.
it's a super cool idea, man. I never would have thought of it, and it's so brilliant. It really is,
Thanks, guys. Thanks. It really means a lot. I love hearing it like that. That's awesome, guys. And if we didn't have people like you guys hanging out and talking and like being part of the community, like what's the point? We like, we're not what's the word? Like, we're not millionaires. We do it because we like it, right?
Right.
So it's awesome. It's good
Yeah.
stuff, man. We couldn't do anything without our community.
And they're not all like tutorials. You know what I'm saying? Like there's only so many. You could sit back and listen to a million how-tos. You can talk about how-to in a different way. You can talk about what you do, what I do, and get the same lesson, have the same educational aspect, if you will, without being so, I guess, punctual. Like do this, do
Yeah.
this, do this, do this. You could talk about what you do, your experiences with it. Someone else is going to, kick their rebuttal back. I mean, again, like I said, it's just it's a super unique way for people to learn. I learned myself. Someone tells me something. If you tell me something, I'm not gonna pick up half as much as I will if I'm just listening to two masters of their art do what they do. If there's two masters doing their thing and I can just observe and listen, I'll learn twice as much as someone saying bum 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 bum.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, man.
and
I
I'm not
appreciate it.
alone.
Visual learner.
I'm not alone. You guys.
No, no, you're a visual learner just like me.
Yeah.
And like I got to see somebody do something before I go ahead and start trying to do it.
Yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
we're also living in the YouTube generation where all of us that need to see it and need to be shown. Like, yeah, I can get the IKEA furniture manual, the trifold pamphlet that says number 1, screw these in, number 2, screw those in. But how much better is it when you have someone breaking it down for you visually, like on YouTube, And so I watch your guys' Instagram reels, and I love how you guys have the person there, and there's the animation to it. And then at the same time, like our show, Snakes and Stogies, we try and throw stuff up on the screen because it's live. So like, I know people are listening on the ride to work. They're not watching it per se, but we always try and say, hey, if you're driving to work and you're listening and you think this is cool, fast forward to, 42 minutes and 10 seconds on YouTube, because you got to see this shit, because we're all visual.
Right.
That's what and let's be real. Most reptile people are visual because we love seeing these things. We love the observations. We love the colors and the textures and everything that goes around in the reptile world. Like, it's so visual. And
Absolutely.
sorry, I got a little off keel on that one. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. I mean, most of the podcasts I do when I listen, I'm usually working. I'm doing my Ubering and grinding and putting on everything. Like literally, I'll probably go through like 4 or 5 episodes during one session of Ubering.
Wow, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, well, I'm grinding. Got to grind for that Gecko money.
I get it, bro. I feel it.
Yeah.
For
So
sure,
we
man.
talking about some good old knobtails today. So
Yeah.
which ones do you keep?
Well, I've only had a handful of the species that are out there, simply because when I first started, and even still, they're really expensive, man.
Mhm.
And like, I tried to buy what I could afford when I could afford it. So I've kept vertebralis, I've kept Cinctus, I've kept amii, I've kept Underwoodosaurus millie, I've kept Lavis pulverensis, and Lavis occidentalis, and I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Just trying to remember like what has been friends and what has been mine over the years, and I tell you, like, I try to be as transparent as I can with you guys. Just recently talked about gatekeeping on one of your episodes, and how Anthony's said it best. He's like, why do we gatekeep, right? And like, we do it to a certain extent because we're prideful of our work that we've done, and we want to be successful, and we kind of, you don't want to give away all the secrets, right? Because you're being successful. Why should you worked hard for that knowledge, you worked hard for that information and what you've attained and what you've learned. Why should you just give it away? They should work hard for it too. And like, I get that concept, but I agree with what Anthony said on that episode of, let's just share it all, man. Let's all be successful. Because we can all enjoy the animals. We can all have cheaper animals. We can all make money on these animals, however you want to look at it. And the whole goal of my Instagram page, which was the Nefers Initiative, knobtails.ig, I wanted to learn as much as I could about knobtails and just throw it out there to everybody. Because every time I tried to learn something, even from some of the top breeders in the world, they were very helpful, but they still didn't give me everything. You know what I mean? And again, that just goes back to, as much as we want to just give it all away. Sometimes you have that little spark in there. It's like, no, man, I work for that. They can work for it too. Like I'll steer them in the right direction, but they can, I'll tell them what to Google. They can do the Googling. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I'm talking about transparency is, Amy I is probably my favorite next to Asper. I've never owned Asper. I can't afford them. Just being blunt.
I'm gonna
And
tell you right now, I found
yeah.
an Asper at Tinley for like $400 last time I was
That's
there.
wild, man. See, and to me, because not to sound pessimistic or like glass half full, I try to be as pragmatic as possible. What's wrong with it?
I think
You
it
know what I
was
mean? You know what I mean?
it was on I think it was on Josh Adler's table.
Really
Yeah. And I actually my
interesting.
buddy actually picked it up too. Because he's
Well,
like,
that's awesome.
Jason, oh, what's his name? Brandon Valentine. I think he's the one that picked it up.
Did he really? I'm gonna
I
hit
believe
that
so.
kid. He never sent me pictures or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Man,
either
all right.
Brandon or Dustin, one of the two picked him up.
I think
They were
Dustin
like,
got, because
yeah, he's
Dustin
like,
sent me. He got Asper's this past year, so
yeah, he's like, when you see Asper on the table, you let me know. I'm like,
yeah.
my
Yeah.
bad, dude. I'm
And like
hungry. Sorry.
I've got friends that breed them and produce good numbers of them for them to both keep for themselves, to keep things going, as well as to give to guys like us. But I feel bad. How do I phrase this? I feel bad asking a friend like, "Hey, man, hook me up with some Asper," because why would I want to deter my friend from making good money on that specimen? You know what I mean? If he can make $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,700 for zebra Cape York banded Asper, like why would I want to deny my friend that? I don't give them all the money possible, and I can't afford it. You know what I mean? So I've never really
Yeah.
reached out to friends like that. I know, but Dustin definitely sent me his Aspers, which are killer looking. But the going back to transparency and like pitfalls and stuff is I've had a lot of bad luck with knobtails because I live in such a tropical climate, and I was
Yeah.
learning a lot on the go, man. And I wound up I lost a lot of Amy eye because I think it was a combination of I won't blame it all on bad genetics, but I will say I think there was about 30 or 40% of it that was bad genetics. Just a lot of hard lined, non outcrossed inbreeding,
Oh, okay.
and my lack of good husbandry. Just to be blunt, and I've been a snake guy my whole adult life, and they're not snakes. And yeah, they live in the harshest environments possible, and they may only eat one bug a week, but that's in the wild, and they're still living in their microclimates, and they're still getting the right level of UV, and they're still getting the right abundance of humidity and hydration. And I messed things up, man, and I didn't do well with them. So I kind of swore off Amy eye for a while until I can really get my shit together, or be honest with myself and say, hey man, that species may not be for me because I don't have the time to commit to them the way they need to be committed to, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
So for the past like 4 or 5 years, I've almost exclusively done Cinctus and Underwood Source Millie, and I've got one male vertebralis that is like the most textbook stud vertebralis you've ever seen in your life. And I actually got him from an online friend, and I bought a pair, and I had them about a month, and the girl died.
Oh, damn.
Just freak rolled on me. And I really feel like it was one of those things where she didn't handle stress well. She was born with the person I got her from. She'd never left his house. And then one day she got thrown in a FedEx box and shipped to Florida from the West Coast. So yeah, and to be honest, because of the price of vertebralis and the fact that most people don't sell females without the purchase of a male as well, I've not pursued it. I said, you know what, until I get myself dialed in more, until I really focus in more on what I've got here, I'll just keep the one as a pet and roll from there.
I love your honesty, man. I love it. People are so, I guess, afraid to admit their flaws that they block themselves from learning.
Yeah.
You know, we all have to fall flat on our fucking faces, right? We all got to fall at some point to learn how to get back up. That honesty is amazing. I wish more people would admit their flaws, where they messed up. I mean, you could simply say you messed up, and I mean, I don't have the answers, but someone could easily say, "Hey, Phil, did you try this? It might be this. Have you checked this? How you doing this?" and then no, their topic would never come up if you never admitted to potentially, failing for a little bit.
For sure.
It's the
For sure,
honesty
man.
is awesome, dude. That's what makes you, man. That's a very unique, real. That's awesome, dude.
Well, thank you very much, guys. And it's crazy, like just focusing on the Amy eye for a minute, dude. They're my favorite gecko. Like they're tanks, man. They're little Sherman tanks. I love them. And I wound up getting unsexed neonates that because the cost was cheap, right? That's what I could afford, and I would get them for 6 to 9 months, and then they go. And I kept mining from the same breeder. And that breeder, I'm not going to go names or anything, but that breeder is a phenomenal person, a fantastic keeper, a world-class herper, just doing what we do the best. And that's why I really feel like it was not necessarily their fault. It was probably a lot of bad genes from inbreeding and my mess ups, So and I'll stick it to that. But I've done pretty well with Cinctus, and a lot of people say, "Oh, well, they're the easiest knobtail." Who cares if they're the easiest knobtail? Like they're still. Why wouldn't we want something that's? Why wouldn't we want something
from Australia?
Yeah, exactly. No, but I'm saying why wouldn't we want something that is a little more forgiving, especially for me that's a snake person, where a lot of my animals, like especially I have a desert room, like it's desert centric room. They get neglect on purpose. Like, some of my Cerastes, I only give them water every 4 or 6 months, depending on how they look. So like, and when I say water, I'm talking about a normal water bottle cap with that much water. That's it. They get that.
Famine is natural, thing, dude. Like people will just, it is what it is. But you make a better animal. You make them stress resilient. You make a more well-rounded, healthier, stronger animal, man. It's, in my eyes, I mean, it's simple. It's a fact, I mean, again, I always say this, me and Jay, but, a lot of people get caught up in the hobby of copying what the next man does, and you forget about nature, right? You forget about what's happening in the wild. And yeah, they're captive bred, sure, but these things are is hardwired as any other wild animal. They still have natural instincts. They still have a genetic makeup that drives them to do certain things, to require certain things. I mean, they wouldn't. Just because we keep them in captivity doesn't mean they need any less of the wild.
For sure.
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
could go on for hours about it. I always do. But the point is copying nature has always, in my book, and I come up from the 80s, keeping snakes in the 80s, was no internet, dude. Everything we had, we'd look at a National Geographic or a book and see how it lived in the wild. And then we would try to copy that in our house in a tank. It wasn't anybody, it was all an experiment. Everything was an experiment. You either worked or it didn't. We were feeding ball pythons fucking gerbils, thinking they were African soft hairs. Nobody, we just, it just like, again, man, it was all an experiment. If you look at then to what I see today, it's like,
it's crazy, isn't it?
Amazing.
It's fucking wild, man. And it's awesome. It's awesome to see it, and it's awesome to live it. I still got to heat rock somewhere.
That's awesome. And you got
man,
dude that actually go out there. You go herping. It's not just books. You're taking your ass out there into the woods where these things live, man. I mean, that's amazing in itself. That's a whole.
I tell you,
did you go to Australia?
I have not. I've never left the continent. Not yet. Okay. Yeah, I had so a good friend of mine who's I don't want to call him a closet herper, but he's a reptile guy, but he's very much he doesn't like come on shows, and he's very under the radar. He's also a fantastic photographer. Him and I were going to meet up with my friend Elliot in Queensland in 2020, and we plotted a whole counterclockwise tour of the continent. And the goal was to see every single Nephra species in the wild. And we had GPS coordinates. We had where the places we were going to stop, all of our campsites, astrophotography. Like we're going to do 3 weeks, bang it out, because it's the adventure of a lifetime. And if we can get, we were pretty good about getting. There's a 7-foot iguana walking across my patio right now. I'm gonna pick up the laptop and show you this. This is wild. Hang on a second,
Oh
guys.
man,
Hold
I
on.
want to move to Florida.
that Florida living.
I'm gonna unplug the microphone for a second because I got to
There's
turn
nothing
it.
like it in the United
Okay.
States. Like it's the coolest shit in the world. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, you live on a
Damn,
canal too, huh? Wow.
that's crazy. Tell you, I'm trying to get my kid to get some orders out there. He's in the Air Force. I was like, come on, go to Florida so I can go. Come on.
That's that Florida's something, man.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I back? The audio sounds good.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I had to unplug the camera to get that thing going. Dude, I wish I could zoom in. The thing's got to be at least 6 foot and got to weigh at least 20 pounds, maybe
That's
15 pounds. It's huge. And he's just,
And that's daily stuff that you get to see, right?
I mean, not daily. I'm sure if my dachshund's out here, he'd scare him away. But yeah, we got a lot of iguanas.
Do you
They're here to stay.
They live a nomadic life, or do you see like the same males around?
No, you see the same males around. And what's crazy is you'd mentioned about the canal. The females have learned to make burrows into the canal banks. And what they're doing is they're making this burrow into the canal bank that goes down, up, and in, so that when the storm water comes, the nest doesn't get flooded out. They've actually
Nice.
adapted and evolved to figure that out, which is wild because it's destroying all the canal banks. Hold on, gentlemen, forgive me. Since I unplugged everything, the computer is screaming at me saying, "You're not doing this, you're not doing that."
You're all
Let
good.
me just, it won't, it actually won't let me change microphones because it's using the wrong microphone. Sorry, guys. Hopefully you guys can edit this out later.
Yeah, we're good.
Well, I think that's amazing how those iguanas literally just adapt. Though we're watching evolution, we're watching adaptation and evolution like right in front of our face. It's pretty
Oh
beautiful.
yeah. Yep. No, just like those remember that
The-
documentary I was talking about before with the anoles?
Yeah,
The
Knowles.
city of the city of Knoll, the urban city of Knoll versus the Knolls that live in the forest. On how the city of Knoll, same exact Knoll, but the city of Knolls are much bigger. They had bigger feet. They were much faster.
No.
Just compared to them, and it was like, why? And they're like, well, thinking like they have to, they're gripping on different textures than just a tree. So feet need to be a little bit longer, just because like those, I guess those little indents in each of the bricks and stuff like that. Maybe I don't know, but I was like, it's just interesting to see something like that.
I can see it. I can see it way better than I can explain it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you guys can hear me. If that's all that matters. I don't think this microphone works. I'm actually going to push it out of the way for a second.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, you guys sound crystal clear. How about now? Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's using the MacBook mic, which it annoys me. Sorry, guys. You got a
You're all
little
good.
OCD on that one.
No, you're all good. Trust me. So, between all those, between the species you have kept, have you noticed any different behavior between them all?
Yeah, absolutely. I found that the vertebralis are extremely shy, and they're probably the most, I don't want to say alert because they're all very alert, but the most nervous of interaction. I keep almost all of them in deep tub drawers and in a simple rack system, but they're not. There's plenty of sand and substrate for them to burrow down into. When I open a drawer of a Cinctus, the gecko kind of looks at me like, "Hey, what are we doing?" When you open the drawer of the vertebralis, it's gone. It's right into its burrow, or it's going to freeze and not move at all, and kind of slowly back up off camera, as they say. And I find that they're very much. It's not that they're more alert. I feel like they're just more afraid of getting eaten. If that makes sense.
I was just going to say it's probably a predation thing. They're
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
And
Are
with
they
the
one of the
Cinctus,
smaller ones?
they are. They're one of
Okay.
those. They're smaller. They're about the same size as the levies, the smooths. The male vertebralis is very small. I mean, he's probably 4 years old now, and he's only about that big. He's tiny. The coolest thing I think of all the knobtails that I've kept is Cinctus bury themselves in the sand.
Yeah, I've seen that. And
Which is
they have
super
all this
cool.
stuff on the top of
Yeah,
top of
and
the
like
dome.
watching them like almost like how a sea turtle buries her eggs, flicking sand behind them, and it's crazy. I want to get time lapse of them doing it, and then like super slow it down, just to see like the muscle movements and see like how they flick just a handful of sand on their back, and they do it 10 or 12 times, and their whole back is covered in sand. It's wild.
Yeah. Kind of like those spiders too, right? Like, have you seen those
exactly.
spiders? Yeah,
Those
where they kind of start.
huntsmen.
Yeah,
For sure,
that's cool.
for sure.
Yeah.
There's some
I can
cool
see that.
to do that, like those sandfish or something. Is that what they're called? Like a sandfish?
Yeah. No, so not nowhere near as cool as sandfish. Sandfish is crazy. I mean, you blink and they're gone. They dive in like an Olympic swimmer.
No,
But no, these guys, they kind of just flop sand on themselves. It's wild.
do camouflage, or
I think it's a combination of camouflage. I also think it is a way to blend in better. So I find that the ones that do the sand kicking on themselves are ones that I don't have as much decor in there. Because even though it's a tub, I try to put stuff. I bury cork flats in the sand, and the sand dries the cork out really, really well, almost to the point where it looks like rock. And I use red dyed sand because, let's be real, it looks cool. Just Exoterra red sand, right? And they don't care; they're indifferent. But I'll put stones, and I'll put some leaf litter on occasion, and some pea gravel in there too. It makes spot cleaning a real pain in the ass because you can't sift it like you would a kitty litter box because you've got all this other substrate and stuff in there. But the ones that have less decor, because I try to vary it up, I try and change it up as frequently as possible, they're the ones who are burying themselves. So I really do think it has a lot to do with like there's not enough adequate hiding places. I'll just throw some sand on myself to hide myself a little bit better. At least that's me anthropomorphizing, But yeah, there's what's that?
I would say with the red sand, they're blending in anyways, just because most of them are pretty close to that color. So they're like, all right, boom, boom, boom. You guys can't see me, but we can still see those big ass eyes. So.
Yeah, and what's crazy is even if they haven't buried themselves recently, if you take them out and put them in a tub and just squirt a little water on them, it's amazing how much different they look when there's no sand on them. When you've like quote unquote washed them off, they're incredible. And then I've also noticed that, and I don't know if it's my geckos or if maybe it's just me and my vision, but when you keep stuff like Underwoodosaurus, they definitively have nighttime and daytime colors. The pattern's the same. The coloration is very much the same, but they may lighten at night. They may darken at night. Kind of like how Cresties and Chahuas, they fire up, they fire down. It's not the same as Rhacodactylus firing up and firing down with emotion or stress or what have you. It's nighttime. I got to do work. I'm going to go this color for the night, or it's this time of night. I need to look like this to do this. At least that's my thought process on it. So I actually, if I have my phone, I'll try and hold it up to the screen real quick. I took a picture. So most of us have seen Nephrosinctus, banded knobtail, pilbara banded knobtails, right? Mm-hmm. Or northern banded knobtails, however you want to say it. This is one that I literally squirted water and stuck her right back in the sand just to see the contrast. Look at this.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it almost looks like an asper.
Yeah.
And that was just her color that night.
Huh. So are they nocturnal, or are they like dedicated nocturnal, diurnal?
Yeah. Dedicated nocturnal. Yeah. The Underwoodosaurus can be a little crepuscular, excuse me. I'll come in the evening, like after dinner, maybe 6, 7 o'clock at night, and I can see them out scratching around. But almost all my Nephris I've ever had, they've always been purely nocturnal. Especially the amii, like hiding in nooks and crannies in the rocks until 9 o'clock at night when they know it's nighttime. Because I've always had windows in all my snake rooms and stuff, and I'll come in there at 9 o'clock and they'll just be kind of poking their head out. But if I come in at like midnight, they're out on the prowl. And my good buddy Elliot, the one I was supposed to do the continent tour with, he graduated from James Cook, and he did a research program studying asper, what is now Arapaga, right? Did I say that right? Nephris Arapaga.
Oh, I've not even heard of it. I've not kept up with that first.
Okay,
like
so they split asper, right? They realized that there's a desert form and there's like a more of a forest form, dare I say jungle form. So the ones in southwestern Queensland he was studying, and he wound up designing these micro radio transmitters that he would strap to the back of a wild gecko and let it go.
Damn.
And it's crazy. It looks like it's like a little backpack, really. And it's got this little microchip on the back, and the radio transponder is a piece of wire, I would say probably the length of a cigarette. And it just looks like, almost looks like a guitar string. You know what I mean? And he just would let him go, and he would track them all night.
That's
And
awesome.
the average Asper or Araponga, whatever the new classification is, the new taxonomy. Scott Eiper, if you're listening, don't yell at me. He would start at, say, 8 o'clock at night. By 8 in the morning the next day, that one gecko had traversed over 100 yards in a single night. And a lot of times would go back to their starting point.
Just gonna ask.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so like they had like an idea or a route for the evening of where they were going to hunt or where they were going to try and breed or whatever it was. But to think about this, okay, 100 yards, an American football field, right? That's a huge spot of land.
Absolutely.
For one little gecko that's almost the length of your thumb.
Absolutely.
And we keep them in a 18-quart tub.
Yeah, right.
And like things like that really made me try and rethink how I'm keeping them within reason, obviously I'm not going to dedicate a whole room to one gecko. Like come on, let's be real. But adding the decor, adding the depth of sand, adding the stuff to let them blend in, let them hunt, let them excavate, whatever you want to call it. The best that I can do within that tub, that was one like a pivotal moment for me to be like, holy crap, man, 100 yards. Dude, I can't imagine how many laps they did while I was sleeping last night.
Right. That's
yeah, it's mind blowing. So, and like I said, that was really what got me to do the rocks and the cork flats and all that crap in there. I mean, I've thrown straw hay in there and leaf litter just to kind of play around and see what they like. A lot of the keepers that are really successful, they don't do that. They have a hide on one side, a hide on the other, 2 water bowls, one on one side, one on the other, with the temperature gradient to the rack, and they'll spray the wet side and leave it be. And it works for them. It works really well for them. I had not had luck doing it like that. I've had more luck keeping it the way that I'm doing it now in a more naturalistic environment. And maybe that's because I do neglect them more, because I'm a snake guy and I'm not checking the tub every single day. And some of these other keepers, God bless them, are tong feeding a dubia roach to every gecko every single day. Like that's not my thing, man. I can't do that. And that's probably why I have so many shortcomings with geckos. Let's be real. I'm a snake guy. I feed it once a week. I'll feed it once a month, depending on the species, right? You can't do that with geckos. You got to be attentive. You got to be there for them. So by having the more naturalistic decor and giving them, I mean, it sounds stupid, but a better life than just sand, at least I've had better success with that because I can't be as attentive keeping it in a more sterile environment, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Give them a natural piece of environment for them to live naturally while you do your other thing. Now, speaking of the snakes, now I've seen some of the stuff you got, and I don't know if our guests have, but let's say nothing short of amazing. What did you keep? What attracted you to both ends of these spectrums here? How do you keep cobras and geckos? How did that happen?
Well, let's be real. It doesn't matter how cool or badass somebody is or how tough they think they are. If it's freaking cute, man, it's fucking cute. You know what I'm saying? Like anybody who doesn't like puppies, get rid of them. You know what I mean? Something's wrong. If you don't like a puppy, something's wrong with you.
Absolutely.
I always kept geckos. I've always kept lizards. Cordylidae is by far next to Nephris. Cordylidae is my favorite genus. I mean, hands down. Cordylus, I should say. Cordylidae family, kingdom, phylum, whatever the hell it is nowadays. So almost my whole adult life, I've kept a smattering of different lizards, mostly Cordylus. But I always wanted knobtails, but they were expensive, man. They were expensive, and it's Australian, so it's not like you could just go get another one. Again, you have that mindset of like, that's the next tier. Like that's an elite keeper's species. I don't know enough to do that. I've always loved knobtails. I've always been infatuated with the Australian animals, and watching Rescuers Down Under as a kid, right? Everybody wants a Joanna. And there was some point where I was like, I'm a grown up. I have money. Not a lot, but I got enough to buy a gecko. I'm going to do it.
There you go.
Screw it. Let's trial by fire, right? Baptism by fire. So I bought one. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I bought another one, and I was an amii and a Cinctus, and I kept them both alive for a long time. And the one Cinctus I still have, the amii went up dying, but after I had it for maybe 3 years, but it was purchased as an ex-breeder male. So who
Oh,
knows
okay.
what that
Yeah.
gecko had been through? I mean, it was huge. It was like almost the length of an iPhone. Like it was a massive, massive gecko. So even though I only had him for a few years, I like to think that he had a long life because God only knows what he did before me. And at that point, I was like, all right, I know what I'm doing. Let me get more. Let me learn more. And just learning and learning and learning and posting and chatting and talking and commiserating. And then we started doing the podcast stuff and like meeting more people and talking to people down under. And it just snowballed. But venomous is definitely my thing. It's my passion. It's my love. Like I'm a snake guy. I'm a venomous guy. I'll be a venomous guy till the day I die. Maybe just not as many. But again, you always have to have like the cute stuff, man. Like it's cool, dude. You know, like I got a little piece
Oh,
of the
yeah.
Pilbara. I got a drawer that I open the drawer and I'm in the Pilbara, right? Like how cool is that? I mean, I've never been there, but I will one day for damn sure. And that's another reason why I keep a good handful of North American colubrids. I love colubrids. I got a handful of pythons too, but I'm a colubrid guy. I am. And I'll admit that. Even though I've got some really cool pythons, I'm a colubrid guy. I didn't have anything harmless for a while. It was me, some geckos, some lizards, and the venomous. And I was like, man, I can't have someone come over and see snakes. Like, I can't because they're like, oh, that's really cool. Can I hold it? No,
No.
like you don't hold this, right? So then I started getting back into colubrids. I had a bunch of king snakes in the past. I had corn snakes in the past. I mean, I had a ton of crap over the years, but so now I'm back in. I've got king snakes, I've got corn snakes, I got glades rats, and my new obsession is subocularis, transpecos rat snakes. So and I think that I got a nice pair of Lee Abbott corns, Okatee corns. That's going to be killer when in another year or two. I've got some Outer Banks Chain Kings I got from Dr. Loafman. Dude, those things are going to be stellar. I've got some Everglades rats from Mike Kosicki. I'm raising them up, and then other than them, I just got transpecos rat snakes that I'm just going to raise up and try and work with them a little bit. And they're the cutest snake. I mean, let's be real. They got those big derpy eyes. They're super silly in terms of like their physical appearance. They just look like a cartoon character. Like what's not to love, you know? So I really focused in on stuff that was cute and fun because I have the other stuff that even though it is breathtakingly beautiful, at least to me, you can't sit and watch TV with it. It's not going to happen. Well, you get to do it once, right?
You know what's super cool about this whole thing is
What's
that,
that?
like I said, with we were kids and dinosaurs, right? We all we love dinosaurs, and we probably all had our favorite, but we loved all dinosaurs,
Yeah.
right? You're keeping a little bit of everything. You have talked about every little thing that you have with a giant smile on your face, just like a little kid would talking about dinosaurs. Now, one time did you mention doing anything or keeping anything you keep to turn a profit?
Yeah.
No, everything you said is with a passion. You want to work, you want to learn, you want to keep. Nothing did you say. Nothing that you do is to make a dollar. That's so beautiful in itself, man. That's
Thank you.
what don't. It hasn't even come up in conversation that this is I'm doing this or this
Yeah.
to make money. You're doing it to learn, to teach, to have, to it's you really have a passion, man. That's super cool, man. It's
Thank
good,
you.
keep finding people like, like yourself, man, that have these real passions. Because for a while during COVID, I mean, obviously we all saw, I mean, the hobby got kind of big for
It did.
kind of the wrong reasons.
It
Everybody
did.
wants to make a buck and
Yeah.
kind of mess some stuff up for a little bit. But as long as there's people like yourself, man, I don't. We're never gonna die. This hobby's never gonna end.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the
Super
kind
cool.
words.
Super cool.
I love it. And don't get me wrong, man. Like when I do produce transpecos rat snakes, I'm gonna sell them. Like, you guys sell geckos too, but like I get a table with Billy Hunt and Casey Cannon every year at Daytona. I don't bring animals. Like we bring some shirts and stuff, but like I don't. I'm not in it for the money. You know what I mean? Like you said. And when I do sell something, cool. You know where it goes? Right back into the restaurant.
Back to the rip.
You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
I
Right.
think about how do I phrase this? I think about thinking about the hundreds of thousands of dollars fucking blown over the past couple decades. And
Yep.
you can't, you don't want to do it. Like, I don't want to do it. You know what I mean? And like people like, oh man, I just had to spend all this money on this car and this, my washing machine broke. And I'm like, oh, that sucks, man. Like, hopefully take care of it. I'm like, dude, I spent $1,000 on a snake that rolled in a week and there's no refund. There's no insurance, right? You know what I mean? And like, it's too small to necropsy. No vet's going to look at it. So it's like, well, you live and you learn, and you learn quick.
Yeah.
So,
learn it.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate the kind words. I do, for real.
Yeah. I wish I had your mentality that back in the day. Like I said, because I mean, I've been to Australia. I've been to Australia.
Awesome,
I've been to Thailand, Africa.
Where in Africa?
I was working in Nigeria for like a year.
Very cool.
So all my workers would come up to me, boss, look at this. Bring me a big ass monitor or some kind of big old toad or some kind of a tortoise or something. So what am I going to do with this? Say, you take it back home, right? I was like, no, I'm not taking this back home.
What's crazy is like you're not the first guy who said, oh yeah, I worked in this city for X amount of time, and it's like, were you outside of Lagos?
No, for
in
Africa.
Nigeria? Yeah.
No, I was working on an Air Force base, so we weren't allowed to. So it was just like this big old camp. But there would be always some reptiles coming through. There'd be some kind of a viper coming through. When it's the wet season, you'll see all the toads and frogs come through. It was pretty cool just watching them.
Awesome.
Like they would like literally go by each light, and all these bugs everywhere, and you just see them just going to town on all these bugs. It was crazy.
That's great, man. That's great.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
I know guys that went to Lagos for a business trip, like for 2 days, right? And it's like, dude, if you drive, obviously it can be dangerous, but if you have the right people, the right locals you're with, and you're in a safe environment, if you drive like 20 minutes outside of Lagos, you will find the craziest house snakes ever, file snakes, wild ball pythons. Awesome. Super cool, man. And I need to go. Like, Africa calls me. I'm an African keeper. Almost every venomous thing up there is either sub-Saharan Africa or like the MENA region, Middle East, North Africa. And it's a bona fide desert room, and my North American colubrids hate me for it. But dude, that's epic that you've been there, And even though you weren't there to herp, you weren't there. You were there for work and government and blah blah. But you still got to see stuff in the wild.
Oh yeah. That's awesome. It was pretty cool. Yeah, there, like I said, in Afghanistan, saw all kinds of vipers, camel spiders out the yin yang. Like,
that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Again,
the only thing I didn't care for was the rodents.
Never left for America.
Yeah, and dude, going back to I completely forgot this. The whole point of me telling you guys about touring Australia back in 2020, I wound up not going because of freaking COVID. And that trip got put on hiatus, and I planned to do it, but now my passport's expired. I got to renew my passport and renew the pre-check flight, frequent flyer crap, and we're gonna do it though, man.
You should.
As people slowly get out of their funk from the past couple years, we're all gonna do it, man.
You should. Has anyone done that? Has anyone ever traveled the continent and found every species?
I'm sure there's been someone who's a native Australian.
Yeah.
But I don't know anyone in herpetoculture that has. I know a lot of times guys that go, they'll try and find a spot like, okay, Alice Springs. Mm-hmm. So there's a strip of desert that connects the two parks basically. And that strip of desert has like campgrounds along it. Well, depending on where you are on that strip of highway is 3 different species of Nephris.
Wow.
So if the weather's right, if the humidity is right and the temps are right and you're there at the right time of year, whether it be early September when all the testosterone's starting to build up in the boys and they start to move, or you're there in February and March when the first clutches are starting to be laid, if you time it right, you can get 3 or 4 species of Nephris on that one road.
That's cool.
So like guys have done things like that, but I don't know if anyone's specifically for geckos done a whole continental tour,
Well, it takes a very specific type of person, man. Just about everything in Australia or Africa, like you said, will fucking kill you, right? Like,
yeah. It can.
YouTube Tommy out to fucking Australia, the outbacks of Australia. He's not going to come back.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, I'd imagine if anyone has, or if there has been multiple people, it's a very small group. I don't know anybody that has, but I know how huge that would be, dude.
Yeah.
National Geographic Discovery would probably buy it. Like that's a movie. Imagine.
It'd be cool, man.
Honestly, maybe I'm like overthinking, but I just think that's.
It'd be a cool ass documentary.
I mean, they're a popular gecko. There's a lot of interest in them. Who doesn't want to see them in their natural environment? And you got a group of people that travel the whole continent of Australia to find all the species. That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
Huge for the hobby. That's for science. That's huge for. It's huge.
Yeah. And I've been watching the Extreme Herpers, and they've been hitting all kinds of places in Australia right now. I think they got probably 3 or 4 episodes on YouTube, just hitting all kinds of different parts of Australia.
Who is this?
It's been called it Extreme Herpers or something like that. They're on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Shit.
Yeah. So, which species have you bred successfully?
Just being transparent, just Cinctus.
Okay.
Just Cinctus.
So that's fine.
And it took me a while to dial things in, to the point where this year I took off this year and I didn't pair anything, just because I moved back last August, so almost a year ago. So with the stress and the temperatures, and in my old place I had the reptile room. And I kept it a little warmer, but it was just the reptile room. But all the geckos, I kept them in my bedroom. It was actually downstairs. My bedroom was on the ground floor, and the snake room was upstairs. And now I have the largest room in the house. That's the desert room, as we call it. And I've really, really dialed in the climate control. I got a bunch of govies, and I put one-way mirror tinting on the windows. And I've got these of course, we're all about aesthetics, right? I got this sheer, it looks like burlap, but it's not. It's like synthetic polyester or whatever, but it looks like burlap. And I got curtains made of that I hung up around the room. So it's got like the African thatched hut vibe, because I'm eclectic like that. Dude, getting the temps dialed in just right. So it's like, you know what? Let me monitor the girls this year. Let me monitor the boys this year. Take a year off, make sure my temps and the humidity are just right. So I'll check the Govee right now since I'm with you guys. And
responsible, man. That's
that?
I said that's super responsible. That's like, how many people would think that? People move and they wouldn't think twice about that. You're like, you know what? You guys are having a rough time. Hold on here. I got an investment. You guys have. Your live. I mean, that's just super cool, man. That's super cool.
Shit. I moved and they dropped eggs for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good that you caught them, man.
Yeah, literally the day I moved in my new place and I set up the reptiles, got everything set up in my enclosures. Next day, boom, eggs. I'm like, all right, well, shit,
that's
here we
awesome.
go.
That's awesome.
Chihuahuas.
Yeah, dude, that's super cool, man. Love chewies. Just looking at the Govee right now. In that part of the north side of the room where the geckos are, it's 79 degrees Fahrenheit ambient. And last night at, I guess, middle of the night, say 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, it was 75.9.
Okay.
So I got at least a solid 8 to 10 degree temp swing last night. Yeah. And obviously it's summer, it's going to be hotter. One thing I love about the Govies is that you tracks all year round. So now that I moved, dude, the minute I brought animals in that room, I reset the Govies so that it's a fresh start. And now I have the minutely, hourly temp swings and humidity of that room forever. For as long as I'm using it, which I think is great. I will say this though, the hardest part is maintaining the humidity because I'm in South Florida. Right now, it's like 80% humidity outside. In the snake room right now, it's 67. But last night it was 37.
Okay.
And that's because it rained this afternoon outside.
Okay.
I didn't open a window. I didn't change the air conditioner. I didn't do anything. I left everything exactly the same. But because it rained outside, it spiked the room humidity from 37 to 67. So hopefully with the air conditioning on tonight and some heaters that are still on up there that are keeping things regulated, it'll probably drop to the 50% tonight. But tomorrow, if it doesn't rain, it'll drop back down to the 40 percentile. But it's tough, man, regulating the humidity, you know, and then you get a species like Nephrus where they need humidity in the air, but they still want the dry desert environment because you need the microclimates. So now I find myself keeping the sand completely dry, but then taking one of those dried out cork pieces and just squirting some, misting some underneath it, and then just laying it back down, you know, and like the vertebralis and the levies, I'll spray it, but keep the heat up and let it crack. And now it's super dense and they can burrow through it. And while they burrow through it when it's moist, once it dries, the burrow is still there, but now it's not lingering humidity. So it's feathering it, man. But I'll tell you, the govies have really come in handy.
Yeah. I have a lot of govies in my place right now. I got the smart plugs. I have that that thermostat that you got, the hydrometer thermometer.
Yeah.
I got that in my incubator right now, so I can monitor that.
That's smart.
I do.
Very smart.
I have Govee humidifiers as well. I have a Govee heater, so during the winter time I'll use that, and like if it goes below like 63, 64, it'll cut on and just bump it up just a little bit, like 65.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
The only thing I do want to get is what was it? I'm probably gonna end up doing that same thing where I was talking to Ann about just getting a bucket of water and a fan. So, because I mean, I live in a desert, and for my new cow room and like all the animals that do need that humidity boost, they definitely need it because my humidity in Arizona is like 10%.
Yeah,
if that.
Yeah.
I do. I keep 2 10-gallon fish tanks full of water, man, and they create like crazy. I have 2,
and just put a box fan on it,
full of just water. You know, I only have animals from one region, so it's a little easier for me to just make one climate in this room. But I mean, it works for ambient humidity, absolutely.
Yeah. So I got the Aussie stuff, and then I got the new cow stuff, and I'm about to get some new stuff. I'm about to get these what are they? This Tanzanian velvet geckos.
Oh, nice.
Homophilus fasciata.
Dude, gorgeous animals.
Yeah,
super cool.
I'm trying to figure those ones out right now. I'm thinking about just treating them just like the electric blue day gecko. Treat them like that.
Yeah. Right? You talking about Williams eye?
Yeah. Kind of treat them like that. Well, they come from close to the same area. They're both in Tanzania, so go ahead. And then I got some stuff coming from over in the UK, those Cerdodactylus triatus. So
that's cool too, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
On those,
I'm excited. Those.
Can I ask you a question? Yeah. Did you go on iNaturalist and see where they are?
Yes.
Did you then go to Google Earth and go to Street View and look around?
No, I went to iNat, but then I also I was on YouTube, and this guy had he was doing these little photo shoots in the forest where they're coming from. So it gave me a good outline of how to build it all out. And then, like I said, I used the iNat and then typed in weather app. What's the weather over there? So what do I need? But dude, I did not do that Google View yet.
It makes me so happy that you said that, man. People think I'm nuts. I've got in my iPhone, because it's like the iPhone weather app. Dude, I've got Mexico, Egypt, South Africa, Mozambique, what's this? Namibia. Like, dude, all these different places that, because even though there's probably not snakes on that weather station on top of that newscaster building, it still gives us an idea, right?
Absolutely.
I think it's awesome.
And that's all you can do, and especially when there's not a lot of real information. Like I said, I'm collecting so many scientific PDFs right now for Cerdodactylus. Like I go to academia.edu or something like that.
Yeah.
And so now they're just sending me them through my email, and I'm just click download. It's all right, because I mean, like I said, Cerdodactylus, there's 300 plus species, and they're always discovering new ones. So, and next you know, I just keep getting more and more articles. I mean, it's cool. It's just information that I can use for them to kind of, put some ideas together.
So my good friend Billy Hunt, he is exactly like us, downloading every research paper and article journal that we can. But he's smart, man. He prints them out on paper and puts them in binders because there's been so many websites. Here it comes. Let's see it. Yeah, dude, there's so many websites that go away. You know, the definitive knowledge base of a particular species is on a website. That guy dies. He doesn't pay the bill anymore. It's gone. You know, God forbid. Look at that. There he is. My man.
Yep.
Love it.
Yeah. So anytime I find something I'm even thinking about trying to work with, it goes in here.
Excellent. Excellent.
Like
Excellent.
I just downloaded
I
those.
just I absorb information off of paper differently than I will other ways. You know, I mean, like turning a page and reading and it's just never going to get old for me. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
technology will never fully replace a book to me.
No,
You know,
no, not at all. Not at all. But I will say this. There's been times when maybe it's my dyslexia, maybe it's because we talked about being visual learners. Yeah, dude. I have taken paragraph. You can't do much. You can maybe do a page or two at a time, but I'll take a PDF of a research article. I'll highlight on my phone, 4 paragraphs from the article, and then you do like where you're going to copy and paste it. But if you scroll over to speak, you can set Siri to read it to you.
really.
Oh.
And like, dude, that's a game changer for me. It's like listening to an audiobook. You know what I mean? Because
There you go.
I'll read a whole paragraph, and I am not the most educated man out there. I'm nowhere near what some of these people in academia are, and I try to grasp as much of it as I can. But sometimes it just eludes me. It does. It's too much for my
it's like
puny
no
brain.
flow. It's just
Right,
words and
right.
words and words and words.
And
like,
words I've never heard before, words I don't know what they
Yeah.
mean, words I have to look up, which is totally understandable. We're all like that to a certain degree. But doing that speak option on the iPhone and having it dictated, read it to me like an audiobook,
Huge for us.
awesome.
They're
Yeah.
just like we can hear it because we can't read something. Our brain is
Yeah.
processing reading while we're trying to absorb. It doesn't work like that.
Yes.
We can hear it. Totally different than trying to read it and read it and read it
Yeah.
and then learn it. And we're not reading words; they're coming out of memory. It's like
Yeah.
it's hard to explain dyslexia, but
It is. But I mean, you know it as well as most of our other dyslexic friends in this world. How many times were we in high school and we read the paragraph and we read it and like we were there, we were present. I have no idea what I just wrote or what I just read, and I have to read it again. And now I feel dumb. I'm like, what did I just do? But like at times where it's difficult, if I can do the speak thing, then rock and roll.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like even with a podcast, right? Just re-listening it because you might have even you listen to that podcast 1,000 times, you might learn something on that 1,001 time.
Yeah.
Like I do it plenty of times. Like I listen to the Australian podcast.
Yeah.
And I listen to the chauffeurs one and the Aussie Leaftail one religiously.
Yeah, dude.
I keep going and going
And you get something new every time.
Exactly.
Every time you get something new. Dude, podcasts that I've been the host of, and I'll be like, man, I remember him talking about William's Eye, right? And I'll rewind. I'll be like, dude, how did I not get that in the moment? It was there. I maybe I didn't store it, whatever. But
yeah, trust me.
That's the beauty
when
of
I'm doing
what
my
we have
edits.
now.
I'm like, God,
Yeah.
damn, seriously, what did I just say?
It's wild. Glad I'm not alone.
So, so you was breeding the Cinctus, right? So before you actually even started breeding them, what was like everything before that? Like what was everything you were doing to get them ready for that season?
So I did what you're doing right now, right? I got all my research papers. I got as many books as I could. This is a few years back before Dr. Julander's book was out, and I made the tragic mistake of learning reproductive habits of these geckos from scientific papers, specifically focusing on either their reproductive cycle or their dietary habits or what have you, in regards to wild specimens that were field collected and dead in a museum, cut open, whatever. Well, what's the problem with that? The problem is it's fucking backwards because we're in the wrong hemisphere.
Yeah.
So when the research paper says that the testicular activity of Nephris cinctus, or at the time Nephris Wheeleri cinctus, between August 31st and October 31st, fluctuated 13% over the course of 6 days, every 6 days, or whatever it is. Obviously, I'm making this up as I talk to you, gentlemen, but that's awesome. Our geckos ain't going to do that. It ain't the right time of year. So now, do I try and raise my temps and change my temperatures and humidity to mimic the Pilbara in September? Or do I wait until our May, June and just see what happens. Does that make sense?
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah.
Like, because it's flip flops, or not even May. Yeah, it would be like May, September, I guess. I don't know. So I realized, let me try and do it that way, which was not a good idea. That was fucking hard. And now the whole room's out of whack because the temperatures
Yeah.
are all over the place. It clearly did not work. The geckos looked at me like, what the hell are you doing, bro? And then I started to, because again, people were gatekeeping. No one would tell me what month to start cycle feeding, what month to start dropping temps, what month to friggin' put them together, you know? And I'm trying to deduce this on my own. And I wound up figuring out that because I'm in South Florida, don't listen to what anyone says. Forget the time.
Yeah.
Just try it when you think it's going to be right. So I had geckos that paired up 6 months later than they were supposed to. You know what I mean? Almost like we talk about subox being, you know, Christmas babies, right? Because they breed so late in the year. Dude, this is what this was. I was having like eggs spit out in February, and I'm like, what the hell? This is wrong. Or, you know, or I had eggs coming out in August. And I'm like, this is fuck. Now I go to sift the sand for poo, and I'm finding eggs, and I'm like, I didn't even know she didn't even look gravid. Like she wasn't even with a male. Like what's going on? My biggest hurdle was not that, believe it or not. My biggest hurdle was getting girls to be receptive to the boys. Because the boys, let's be real, you know as well as I do, but boys are boys. Whenever. They're gonna go right. As long as the time of year is right, he's gonna do it. But the girls, so you guys keep Nephros or no?
No, I keep Stropharis.
You keep Stropharis. Okay, so I don't know if Stropharis does, but a unreceptive female, especially in the Wheeleri group, whether it be Wheeleri, Cinctus, or excuse me, now they're just Wheeleri and Cinctus. The females that are unreceptive will mimic the peacocking of the male as a defense mechanism. So the boy comes out, he's got his tail up, he's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, he's waving his tail around, doing the naughty dance, right? And normally the girl would be receptive. Well, if the girl's not receptive, she mimics his peacocking, and now her tail is up. And the first time I saw that, I was like, I got that. That's not a boy. That's a girl. He doesn't have. I looked under the hood, like that's a girl. and now all of a sudden she's beating him up because she's like, no, dude, not tonight, dear. Right? And I was like, this isn't going to work. And I separate him. And I wait a day or two, give him some food, give him some water, put him again. Different female. She's now doing it to him. Different girl. And I'm like, what is going on? Why are these girls so unreceptive to the boy? And I realized it was the wrong time of year. He wanted to go. She knew it wasn't the time, it wasn't the place. And then finally, when I did dial it in, at least with this one pairing that I focused on specifically, just because they looked really, really good. My first pairing I ever did, February. I was like, February, it's a new year. Throw them together. If they fight, they fight. Whatever. No, she just laid down there and let him do his thing. And this is a gecko that, like 4 months earlier, was trying to fend him away. I was like, all right, I'll just roll with it. Let's try it again. Next year, do the same thing. She goes in Februare.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish I had more. Yeah, I wish I had more data to talk. But the care guides that I had, dude, that shit was wrong for me. Wrong, and I say wrong for me because of where I am. Now, I got acquaintances that live in Miami that they go off of the same North American pattern that all the big guys do, is Steve Sykes and Bud and Supreme, like all these guys, they have like their Nephris time frame. The 2 or 3 people in Miami, they do that and it works for them. And they have simplistic they have what we described earlier, where it's very almost sterile, but still to the gecko's needs.
Yeah.
It just didn't work for me. And dude, maybe it's because maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe they know I'm overthinking it. I don't know. It's very, very anthropomorphizing, very anecdotal. But that was figuring that out was really hard in terms of when and how to do it. And then seeing that the girl was multiple girls were unresponsive to multiple boys. I even so far as this to skip that year, the first year I skipped it completely because I thought, well, maybe the girls aren't ready. Yeah. Maybe, you know, he's a college guy hitting on a high school girl, and the high school girl's like, no, you're too old for me, right? Maybe that, right? Stranger danger. Maybe that was the case. I'll give him another year and see. And no, it was just time of year, man.
Okay.
So I know there's a very long-winded explanation. I hope I answered your
No, no,
question.
no. You're
Sorry.
good. That's perfect.
And I'll tell you
That's
what, that
proof.
that first breeding that I ever did with that one girl that was peacocking back, she laid 2 perfect eggs. I got them in time. They were perfect. One egg went bad instantaneously. The next day it was just like flat and gross. I was like, okay, well I ditched it. The other egg was flawless, a textbook specimen gecko egg. But with the Nephris eggs, because I was having them lay in wet sand, the egg is completely encrusted with sand because of all the external fluids that were on the egg when she laid. So I very gently take my finger and I kind of just brush off some of the sand, but the egg still had a rough texture, a sandpapery texture to it. So I put it in
Little
the egg
gritty.
cup. I put it in the egg holder thing with the perlite, much like I've done with many other eggs over the years. I put it in the incubator, and I wait, and I wait, and I wait, and I have not produced. Come to think of it, that may be the first lizard eggs I'd ever produced, because honestly, all the other lizards I had, they're always live bearing. All the cordillus, they're all
Okay.
live bearing. But I'd done tons of snake eggs, all different species, venomous, harmless, all kinds of stuff. Well, my one friend had bred beaded lizards, and he was so like obsessed with making sure the eggs were good. Every other day, he'd open the incubator and he'd look at them and he'd close it, and he'd look at them and he'd close it, and he'd look at them and he'd close it. And he let black mold in just because it's South Florida, and black mold ate all his beaded lizard eggs. So this being my first lizard egg, good egg, I was like, don't do that. Just leave it alone. Like, turn the light on and look in there. When you see the little thing wiggling around, then you can go in. Well, it came to like 92 days. And I was like, this is long, man. This is real long. I was like, I'm just going to cut it open. If I kill it, I kill it, live and learn. So I went in my bathroom, had everything cleared out, and I opened the egg container, and I go to pick up the egg with my fingers because I'm going to put it on a paper towel, and it weighed nothing. And I was like, what the hell is this? And I shine my candling light to it. It's completely empty. I was like, what the heck?
Hollow.
So I took cuticle scissors and I cut it. It was completely hollow, as if one of those artisan blown out eggs that you see like on like a pedestal in the museum. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Blown out ostrich eggs. It was completely devoid of any kind of contents. And I've determined through my crazy OCD of Googling the shit out of this that the egg was probably infertile, much like the other one. But because of the sand around it, it preserved it perfect to the point where the shell looked gorgeous, but there was nothing ever in there. The inside just, I guess, evaporated. It permeated through the eggshell or something. Who knows? But to this day, I've never figured out how that happened or why that happened. But we've gotten good ones since, so that's good. But
there you go.
Yeah. In the cup or something.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It was wild.
It's interesting. I mean, it makes sense though. The embryotic fluid on the outside of the egg that forged with the sand or whatever probably just plastered it. It makes sense. Damn, that sucks. I'd be mad as fuck. 90. Yeah. Nothing in it.
Yeah, man, that was painful. That was real painful. And like I've never sold a knobtail. I just keep everything. Just because I haven't done enough. You know what I mean? Like, I have a very, very small collection of geckos. When you have a baby doesn't make it, dude, that's crushing, man. Crushing. I hate, again, we're just being honest with everyone. Like, all the animals that have passed away over the years, when you have this many animals, like, it's going to happen. Animals die. It's part of the game when you have that many. But when you produced the baby gecko, bro, and it doesn't make it, dude, that's painful, man.
Yeah.
That's like,
it makes you rethink everything that you're doing,
Exactly. And like, again, who knows? That animal could have had a birth defect that I didn't know about, could have had an enlarged heart, could have had undeveloped organs, who knows? But it's still rough, man. It's real rough.
Yeah.
Do you keep these things communally? Do you keep
No, So Underwoodosaurus are supposedly colonial. You can
Really?
keep them in
Oh,
huge
shit.
groups as long as you don't have males fighting each other. If you have like one male and 4 or 5 females, then rock and roll. But it was always conveyed to me from many people to never keep Nephris communal unless it's lots of space and female only. Because what happens is the males don't fight per se. Male Nephris really don't have any kind of male combat at all. But the male will get into a breeding mindset and he'll essentially breed himself to death to the
Yeah.
point where he won't eat, he won't drink, he'll just want to continue to breed. So it's been a real big thing for me of like, okay, I've left them together for 48 hours. Let's get the male out for a week,
Okay.
give him a week off, and then let her do her thing. And then if I do decide to repair him, he's going to go to someone else, not her.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Little genetic diversity too. That's
Sure.
people mixing around. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, especially since like we can't get new blood in, so you got to spread that genetics around.
I was real lucky with all the people I've ever got knobtails from, regardless of species. They all kept very good records. Not so much like they maybe didn't know what year it was born, but they knew it was produced by Dr. Julander or whoever. You know what I mean? So I've been really lucky in that because I'm a horrible record keeper. I try, I really do, but I'm just forgetful, and I try to keep notes on my phone, and that gets all messed up. But I do know who produced all my Nephris. So like that, just so I know.
Like shit, as far as like I got into new cow stuff, and slowly, surely phasing out the crested gecko because they were just a pastime while I raised my lychees and my chihuahuas and whatnot. I love my chihuahuas, man.
Yeah,
fucking love them. I've had giant
the best, man.
Snakes my whole life. But my point is, and they do keep records, but nothing like these knobtail guys, man. They run real tight ships, much smaller community, and it's just, I don't want to knock any other sect of the hobby, but they definitely run a different operation, man. There's less.
You have to.
Right? They do, but I'll say this: I don't consider myself in their league. I don't, because those guys are so. See, there's no good synonym for what I'm about to say. Like, I do not consider them elitists. I do not, but it almost has that clickiness to it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Where it's like they see you, they know you, and then finally when you know you're dialed in, then they accept you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like that is that form. It's not a form of gatekeeping, but it kind of is.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just want to make sure the right people are getting into that community,
and that's why I don't blame them because of that and that record keeping and stuff, because we talk about this with carpet pythons all the time. You get someone who has a Jag, or let's use diamond jungles, right? Mm-hmm. Dude, diamond jungle F1s, gorgeous. Do I think we need to do that at this point? No. Do I blame someone for doing it? No. Do what you want to do. But the problem is that you may have the most stand-up guy who says, okay, I took a purebred diamond and a purebred jungle, whatever you want to use those terms, all the Morelia people listening to this, and I breed them together, and I have F1 diamond jungle babies, 50-50s, right? Gorgeous animals, great pets. Dude, my first carpet I ever had was diamond jungle F1. Love that snake. It's like 7 foot. That's awesome. They sell it, again, an honorable person, a reputable person. They sell it and they go, hey, just so you know, this is not a jungle. This is not a diamond. This is an F1 hybrid. And that person goes, all right, cool. It's just a pet. No problem. But then they go off to college. They get a divorce. Something happens. Yeah. Now that snake ends up at somebody's pet shop. And they go, it's a really good looking jungle. And then they throw it in the mix. And now you're really mixing stuff up. And I use that one because it's an easy 50-50, but like some of the stuff that's like, whether it be spider ball stuff or Jag carpet stuff or whatever, you can't get mad at the person who did it. And you almost can't get mad at the person who bought it if they didn't know, or they weren't told, or they just labeled it wrong. I get weary with, how do I phrase this? I get weary with that clickiness, but I understand why they do it. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Dude, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like we were saying before with the gatekeeping. There's almost levels to it, right? Like to gatekeep, to keep someone out of your circle, to me, is wrong.
Yes.
But to so much certain amount of information back because you want to spark that interest in someone to find it out for themselves. 100% okay. You know, like if I tell you everything, then how much passion can you really have? You should want to find these things out. You shouldn't want to just come have me tell you how to do it or what to do, but I will point you in the right direction. I will let you know what you need to know to find out what you're after, but I understand, you know, because then you just make everything a crested gecko, right? Like everything becomes just. So I get it, but I get the other side, like you're saying. I mean, I don't know how we fix that. I don't know if there is a fix for it.
And that's the thing. I don't know if there is a fix either. And I feel like as we progress the way we have been, you're going to see better record keeping. You're going to see better practices in that regard, which in theory will open those gates more. Because guys and gals are going to see it. They'll go, you know what? I wasn't gonna sell to that guy, but he's doing pretty good. All right, he seems like he's doing the right stuff. All right, let's give him a shot, you know, and go from there.
Yeah. So with the babies, are you keeping them just the same as the adults, or I mean, just a smaller tub?
So smaller tub, just for easy a baby, right? But I do at least the first 6 to 9 months on paper towel. Because I want to watch the feces. I want to see urates. I want to see if there's bugs hiding places. And like, dude, Nephris love discoid and dubia. I never remember which one I'm allowed to have in Florida. Whichever one I'm allowed to have, I have.
You're allowed to have discoids.
Discoids, thank you. And but the problem with discoids is they burrow. You have a baby knobtail that is literally 4 grams. Okay. And the weight of the bug is almost as much as half the gecko's weight, right? Well, if it can't find it, it's toast, right? Yeah. So in the wild, there's hundreds of thousands of them living around the rock that baby gecko is living on. In the tub, it's not going to find it. So I do paper towels so that the gecko can not only go underneath the paper towels if it wants to hide, but it can find the bugs. And then again, I get to monitor the humidity. I get to see if there's any mold in there. I get to see how the poop looks. I get to see if there's shed skin and it didn't get buried under sand, or if the gecko consumed the skin correctly. It's just a better way for me to monitor stuff on that regard. And then right at the 6 to 9 month area, depending on how big or how good the gecko's doing at hunting, because they're really bad hunters as babies. They suck. I don't know how they survive in the wild. Then I'll put them on a thin sand, right? So just enough sand to get them going, and maybe a couple months later, then I'll increase the depth of the sand, but I still keep all the decor in there. You know, instead of having a big cork round or cork flat with big stones, I'll do a toilet paper roll, or I'll do a couple toilet paper rolls, or you know, like I have a Pyromilana, Arizona Mountain Kings, and babies, paper towels, and then I take toilet paper rolls and I save all my toilet paper rolls for like a couple months, right? Because it's amazing how much toilet paper you go through. Like, you don't realize because you just throw it away. But when you save the tubes, you really know. And what I'll do is I'll take those tubes, which are, you know, that big, and I'll squish them down flat and I'll make rock stacks. And now the gecko can go in between the rock stacks, much like the Arizona Mountain Kings do. And now they have their rock pile, but it's just cardboard tubes. So God forbid it collapses on the gecko or the gecko gets stuck in there. It's so light and so pliable that it can move the tubes on its own. And then if the tubes get soiled, if they get wet and they get funky, I throw them away and put new.
Very cool.
Yeah. But yeah, babies, I'm almost always paper towels for babies just to keep an eye on things, you know?
It's the best way.
How finicky are they with feeders? I've heard like there's like a cricket that they don't like. You have to get like a different type of cricket.
I have never had a problem with a knobtail eating as long as it can see it and reach it if it's attainable, right? They're very movement based. I don't think it's like a tyrannosaur where if you stop moving it, you can't see it, but they want to see that movement. So a cricket crawling along the sand, money, but a discoid hauling ass across a paper towel is tough. It gets tough.
Yeah.
Because they'll see the movement, but by the time they key in on it, it may be gone. Some people do the tiny little cup so that the bug can't crawl out. I've not had good luck with that. I find the gecko
Yeah.
just stands there and kind of just stares at it or ignores it completely. I've had better luck putting in 2 or 3 crickets, coming
Yeah.
back in like 2 hours, seeing if they're still there, put another 2 or 3 crickets. But I will say this: I did not know this. Again, we talk about learning things the hard way. So I didn't know that geckos could throw up.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I had no
Especially
idea.
the Aussie geckos, they like to gorge themselves. Like any Aussie gecko I've seen, they will try to gorge and gorge and gorge, and then just hawk all that shit back up.
Dude,
My
so
my my female
that
Celiaris did that shit the first night that I got her.
really,
Yeah, I accidentally dropped like 5 crickets in there, and she went took all 5. And the next day, I was like, God, is that a big ass shit? No, you threw up. Fuck. So I gave her a few days off, let that stomach do whatever, and then like Thursday, Friday, she was good. She was back to eating again.
yeah, I had a very, very similar thing, man. I had no idea that was a concept, and I wound up having a Levy's, a smooth knobtail, in a little enclosure in my kitchen. It was like we call them the kitchen gecko. Hold on 1 second, bud. My computer's being weird.
So we'll edit this out.
Sorry, man.
Yeah, okay.
What were we talking about?
Kitchen
Your
gecko.
levies in the kitchen.
Oh, kitchen gecko. Yeah, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I got this Levy's and a little vivarium in my kitchen, the kitchen gecko, and dude, I would feed him, 10 crickets once every 4 or 5 days. Wasn't that big a deal, and like he wasn't part of the routine because he was off in the kitchen,
Oh yeah,
right,
yeah.
out of sight,
Yeah.
out of mind, and he just started losing weight, and I was like, why is he losing weight? This isn't good. And then he threw up for lack of a better word, an owl pellet of cricket parts. And what
Yeah.
he was doing is he was gorging himself, like you said, and throwing them up. And then I guess either he would step on it inadvertently throughout the night and bury it. But I found like 4 or 5 of those things in there. And it was almost
Damn.
like for so many weeks. So I wound up pulling him out, putting him on paper towels, giving him like 2 crickets, monitoring him. A couple days later, 2 crickets, monitoring him. And I just kept getting more and more food, easing him back into it because, dude, he ate like he was going to the electric chair. So
they all do.
Live and learn, man.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Have you ever dealt with any impaction keeping with these desert species on sand or anything?
Not in the sense of consuming substrate, in the sense of dehydration.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, one time I had an adult female cinctus that just stopped eating, and I was like, "This is weird." I would open the tub and find all these dead crickets that just died from living in that environment, and I noticed she had like a lump. And I thought maybe it was some kind of ovarian follicle issue or something. I don't know. And I wound up massaging it, and she almost prolapsed in my hand, but I wound up knocking out this calcified nugget of urates. And so I soaked her in 50-50 water and Pedialyte. And by soak, I mean, a centimeter, if that, for a couple hours. Couple days later, do it again. And I don't keep water bowls with my Nephris. I just do spraying. But for her, I did like I did with the Cerastes, little bottle cap, and I actually watched her licking the rim of the bottle cap, like not drinking because they don't really drink, but kind of how they lick.
They absorb through their skin, right?
Yeah, I think they have kind of like that chameleon syndrome thing, but no, they're almost exclusively licking off stuff.
Okay,
They licking off themselves, off the walls. Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching something, and because they were talking about the thorny devil.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so there was a little thing on there, and literally they showed them kind of just by the water, and like the water was like kind of just going up into their skin, and they're just absorbing it through their skin instead of drinking it. So I didn't know if all of them do it.
Are they the ones where they can channel the water from their back to their mouth?
Yeah,
I believe so.
Yeah, I think that's wild, man.
Fun, gnarliest thing, man.
Mm-hmm.
So cool.
Yeah. Freaking Australia. Now, I will say this. I had something that was wild to me that I'd never even known existed. You ever heard of a disease called pseudobronchophthalmos?
No.
Probably butchering that. They call it PB disease. It's actually prevalent in human infants. Basically, it's a swelling of the eye with, I don't want to say saline, but just water, basically.
Yeah.
And the eye bulges and swells because of a sinus issue. So in human infants, If they notice that one of the baby's eyes is starting to swell, then they do some procedures to clear out the baby's sinuses. The swelling goes down, the eye retracts back to normal, like everything is cool. But there's very, very few cases of this in reptiles, and every time there is cases very few cases in captivity. There's more in the wild, but it's almost always the Carphodactylidae group. So all the Indo-Pacific Aussie gecko species, right? So what happens is for lack of a better word, the sinuses get clogged on, let's say the right side gets clogged, the left eye will compensate for that by filling with fluid underneath the eye cap. So the eye itself is perfectly fine. The gecko can see the veins and all the pieces of the eye are crystal clear under a microscope. It just has this giant goggle of fluid in front of its eye, and it proceeds to swell and swell and swell to massive sizes, scary sizes. And there's basically only two ways to cure it. You either leave it alone, and it will eventually pop on its own through shedding and whatnot, or if the gecko's large enough, you can actually have a vet lance it in a particular way where it will drain that fluid and not touch the actual eyeball itself. Well, how do you do that on a 12-gram baby gecko? You don't. And I figured out that what happened to this particular gecko was she was such an aggressive feeder that when she dive bombed a cricket, she would almost dunk her whole head in the sand. And what she was doing is she was sticking sand up her nose inadvertently. It clogged that one sinus. She goes to shed. Obviously, that sinus doesn't shed correctly. And now she has a clogged sinus on the right side of her face, so the left eye bulges. And I'll send you guys pictures. It's super freaky. But talking to a couple vets, talking to a couple gecko guys in Australia, they basically said, look, man, you're not going to lance the eye of a 12-gram gecko. Just leave it alone. And dude, it took almost 2 years for it to go away. And it just, one day, it was just a popped bag.
Wow.
Just like a deflated balloon hanging off her face. Yeah. And like, I kind of rubbed it with my pinky. It didn't seem to bother her. She didn't care. And dude, she living life. Never came back.
I've seen that one time, and I think it was with a lychee. Like this lychee had this massive eye on one side, and I believe they tried to do the lesion, and get it cut open and drain it out, but I believe it came back. But this was like maybe a few years ago, so I haven't really paid attention too much to the updates on that one.
Yeah,
that was super crazy.
There's a bacterial infection common in leopard geckos from, I don't want to say bad husbandry, but people don't realize how much bacteria is harbored in sand. And that's why with all my geckos that are on sand, every 6 months or so, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not religious with it, but every 6 months or so, I change that sand completely. I dump that shit out and throw it away, because we sand sift and we get the nice kitty litter turds out of there, but there's still bacteria living in that sand.
Yeah, it's still particles.
There's still particles, yeah. So there's actually a disease where a lot of leopard geckos will get that bacteria in their eye, and it makes like a funky cheese in there. And a lot of people, they'll see the cheese, they'll clean it out, they'll get it treated, whatever. Sometimes it doesn't. And what happens is it swells the eye. And because they have actual eyelids, the eyelids will start to close, they'll get gumped up. And what's happening is the infection is on top of their eye, and it pushes their eye down into the ocular cavity. And what happens when the vet tries to open the eye or clean it or clear it, they destroy the eye inadvertently. And I've seen a couple leopard geckos with that. But that is completely different than the PB disease, because the PB disease is simply a clogged sinus, while the leopard gecko one, from what I've gathered, is an actual bacterial infection of some kind.
Yeah.
So.
That's cool.
See, how would you have learned it if you didn't go through it, man?
Yeah, exactly. And dude, that's why I say, like, there's some people that are killing it with knobtails, man. They're doing so good. I'm so happy for them. They're making babies, and they're selling babies, and they're having these beautiful adults, and they're doing cool vivariums, naturalistic style desert vivariums. And I think about how hard I fucking had it, man. And like how hard I still have it, dude. And I know that it's probably because those people I talk about in Miami that are just killing it, they have maybe 20 geckos in a rack, and that's it. And I've got a ton of other crap, and I'm a snake guy. So like it's almost like a subconscious neglect. I know that sounds horrible, but you're so used to feeding something once a week, cleaning poop once a week, that like you
Yeah.
can't do that with the geckos, man. You can't.
Oh,
And
yeah.
even
I hear it all the time.
yeah, all my
Yeah.
cordillas I've had over the years, like they did not, some of the cordillas, I would literally dump 50, 60 crickets in there on a Monday, and then they would still be fat by Friday or Saturday, just because it took them a couple days to find all those crickets. But
Yeah.
you can't do that with nephris. They'll get stressed out. They'll be like, oh my God, there's bugs everywhere. How do I get away from the bugs? I can't. I'm stuck in this tub. They'll stress and not eat, or they'll do what our geckos did, gorge themselves and then yak up an owl pellet and dehydrate themselves and make it worse. So
Yeah.
I really feel like anybody who wants to get into nephris, my statement's always been go for it, reach for the stars, love it, enjoy it, but do not treat them like a leopard gecko. Do not treat them like a snake, because they're not. They're not.
Yeah.
It's not hard. It's just not easy.
Yeah. And I said, make sure they read Mr. Dr. Julander's book. I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, man.
I got that book over here too.
Yeah.
Actually won that one in a contest. I was like, oh, shit.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, man.
So with those tails, have they? Have you read up anything about those tails? Is there any kind of sensory organs in there? Do they use it for anything else?
Yeah. I'm a firm believer that is. So there was a study done, and my buddy Elliot, if he hears this, he's going to be like, I told you the paper, blah, blah, blah. So there was a paper that came out basically trying to determine if there was sensory organs in the knob. And from what I've gathered, it's more electrosensors than a shark's face. But they still don't know why they have it. They don't know it.
Nature does nothing for nothing. Nature's not stupid. Anyone that thinks their tails don't serve a purpose, or be very foolish to think that nature made that for nothing. Like, we just haven't out yet what it's for, why. I mean, I wonder why. If they're finding if they have electrical sensors, maybe bugs, sensing bugs, or
yeah. And I mean, it could be something as simple as atmospheric conditions.
Rain?
You know, yeah. This rock has more humidity than that rock, so I'm going to sleep under that rock tonight.
Absolutely.
You know, who knows? We know that with some of the what we call wide-tailed knobtails, so the Levy's complex, the Wheeleri complex, even the Underwoodosaurus millie, they have this very broad, almost paddle-like tail, solely for fat storage, like a camel's hump, and for peacocking. It's to stand up, almost like those crazy ornate jumping spiders from Australia that do like the crazy dances and they flip their abdomen in the air with the crazy colors. Like, it's the same concept, man. Anyone who's ever seen knobtails court each other, that peacocking is such a very intense thing. That's why it's so wide. But that knob, that sensory knob, it's got to be for atmospheric or temperature and humidity, or I don't know, something.
Little weather ball, we've designed balls that sense atmospheric pressure and temperature and changes.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, nature is way smarter than we'll ever be. You know, it's
crazy watching them undulate when they're hunting is wild, man. Because they'll have this knob and they'll just do this.
Yeah.
And you'll just watch that crazy undulation of the tail, and you're like, how is it doing that? You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, bam, it pounces on the cricket. So let me turn my light on real quick. Hold on.
Go ahead.
Because it's getting a little dark out here.
Gotcha.
It's almost dark where I am too. But it's not sun go down different time near you, obviously, right? It's not dark.
Shit. Hell no, the sun won't go down over here. It's like 7:30.
Oh, see, it's 8:30. The sun's just going down here.
Yeah.
It's got to be the same time near Phil. We got like the same.
Yeah, you guys are on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. It was getting dark, and you're going to have to edit this to hell. Sorry, man.
You're all good. You're all good. Just
try to do it all in one take. All right.
I got plenty of time to go ahead and do my edits. So,
cool.
Before I get to the last question, let me ask you something. What would be a good starter or a beginning knobtail for somebody? Would it be the Underwoodosaurus, or do you think maybe a Cinctus?
I think those two are tip top, man. Underwoodosaurus is super forgiving. They're not as desert. They're more foresty. So I keep my
deciduous
Underwoodosaurus.
Forest?
What's that?
Like deciduous forest?
Deciduous forest is perfect. Yeah. Because you realize they're almost the whole eastern side, and then some of the south middle, and then up into the west. I keep mine on a mixture of Jungle Mix and Eco Earth.
Okay.
And I let it get dried out, like to the point where it's just dust. And then I know, okay, now I need to, either change it or rehydrate it and soak it through. And then I spray them down. They like it hot, they like it humid, they like it cool, they like it damp. They're both, so they're very forgiving. But in terms of a true Nephris, a true knobtail, Cinctus is the best beginner because they are so forgiving. Because they're desert species, they hold their water really well, they hunt really well, and it's red rocky desert. Like what's not to love? And they got cool bands, man. You know, in snakes we always talk about like there's banded people and there's striped people, and I'm a banded person through and through.
Right? Yeah, I like that. All right. So, well, my last question is, out of all this, the biggest failures, what were your, what lessons did you learn from it, and then, like, how did you go forward from that?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned from the knobtail stuff is don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. The one person that you think is going to not want to talk to you or is going to not give you information, you're not the only person that thinks like that. So when you do ask them for help or you do try to spark up a conversation, a lot of times they're like, absolutely. What do you want to know? What do you want to talk about? Let's do this. And I feel like that's a hurdle that I still go over to this day. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to talk to him because like I'm going to ask him a question and he's going to look at me like, who's this guy? Who's this Phil guy? What, he thinks he can just reach out to me on Instagram? And then a lot of times you do it and they're like, man, yeah, I love talking about geckos. Let's talk about geckos. And you'd be surprised. I also think that don't be afraid to just do it, because now we're at a point now where there is so many of guys like the three of us that if we don't know it ourselves, we know who to direct them to. Right. And just the communication that we have in the 21st century on this stuff, just in general, like I get people hit me up all the time, friends of friends, friends of family, and they're like, hey man, I know you keep snakes. Do you ever work with Peruvian boas? No, but go look at this guy's Instagram, message him, say that you already talked to me, and go from there. Like, you know what I mean? Little things like that, they go a long way. And I feel like a lot of people are apprehensive to take a plunge or to ask for help, or like we were talking about earlier, like admitting fault. Like I work in retail. We're at a time now where anyone can learn anything the night before they go shopping. So I'll be at the retail sales counter and someone will come in and they'll say, is this 4 ounces or the 6 ounce model? And I go, you know what, sir? I don't know. Let's Google it together. Because clearly you did your research the night before. I can't remember the weight of all these products in this retail store. Like I'm just not going to. It's very hard. But yeah, I'll admit that I don't know it, and let's do it together. So
I like that.
There you go. Awesome.
Definitely like that. All right. And you got anything, man?
Yeah.
Before I gotta go and start feeding here a little bit.
Personal, but if there was one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you started, what would it be?
That's tough, man. Pay more attention.
Yeah.
Pay more attention to what you have, both in a, we're always looking for the bigger, better thing. We're always looking to strive more in our lives and our keeping and our animals, all that. But focus on what you have while you're still doing that, because I missed observations. And I don't have kids, but like my friends and family that do, they always say, be there as much as you can in the early years, because you only get that once and you're gonna miss stuff. And it's the same thing with our animals. Observations that I knew I should have witnessed and I didn't, notes that I should have taken and I didn't, remembering something that making notes of an observation that you thought was unique. So I've got one left now, a small group of stiletto snakes, Atractaspis. I've documented everything. No one's keeping them naturalistic. I'm the only guy that I know of that is. Everyone else is keeping them in a sterile environment because they're incredibly hard to keep alive. They're incredibly hard to feed, and they're using them for venom production. So they have to keep their faces sterile and clean, no dirt, no bacteria. So I just took notes on everything, man. And they just kept dying because it's very difficult to do them. But now I have all that data. And I feel like back in the day, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, however long it was, when I first started keeping X, Y, and Z, I would see something like, oh, wow, look at it do that thing with its tail. That's really cool. And that was it. And it's like, no, man, you should have checked that thing every night to see if it kept doing it, or maybe get it on video, or maybe make a note. Hey, on this Tuesday at this time with this temperature, it did this thing with its tail. And who knows, maybe I wouldn't have had those horrible pairings in the beginning.
Makes sense.
I mean, it's a what if scenario, like woulda, coulda, shoulda. You know, it's what if, what if this, what if that. I feel like there's so many times where I was like, yeah, I got this snake, it's really cool. I never looked at it. It's like, why? So I took it for granted. I was like, oh, I'll look at it later. No, observe your animals, get those observations, get those interactions, and whether it's just for the pure enjoyment of seeing it and being there with it and interacting with it, or it's for the citizen science, the research in your own brain. Whether you tell anyone or publish it or anything, you know that happened. You got to observe it, and I think that's awesome. That would be what I would say.
Great advice, man. It's great advice. Be in the moment, you know. Don't think next animal. Pay attention to what you got. You know, it's not just a check off. Learn them. Got them. Learn them. Absorb it.
No, I've been dealing with Chihuahuas for a little while. No, I can start telling them when they're in their little shitty moods. Now, like, especially like if I walk in the room and I already see my male at the glass,
for sure.
He's in a shitty mood. He's like, get out of here. I don't want you to bother me. He'll start gaping as soon as I get there. I'm like, all right, you're in one of your moods. And then usually the female comes to follow after a while. So, and then, and there's times where they're not at the glass. But okay, they're pretty cool right now. I can take them out and it won't like flip out. So you kind of just that observation, just to know how your geckos act, how what's their moods at that time. Definitely, that's some great advice right there. Yeah.
Thanks. I missed my one ovulation of the year that I wanted to get. I missed it because I second guessed myself. I saw the snake, saw her basking, saw her body inflated and her dark coloration. I was like, is that an ovulation? Nah, she's just fat from this week's feet. Like, nah. And then come back like a day later, gone. I was like, damn it, that was it. Had I not been looking, or I would have never known, because it was literally a 1 day thing, maybe 2 day thing. I hadn't looked at her for 2-3 days. She could have been doing it the whole time. Who knows? So we can't always be there. We can't always be present all the time. But every time that you think, man, I should go in the snake room today. I'll just watch TV.
Definitely,
man, do it.
Maybe
I do that too much in my life. I do that too much now.
Those VivTech cameras, start putting them in there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. So I kind of got spoiled with that. My buddy Henry and I, we were breeding Naja siamensis, the Indo-Thai black and white spitting cobras, and we took the Wise cameras, and we had the like epoxy suction thingy that you stick onto the glass. Well, I stuck it on the inside of the cage, pointing down, because dude, their courtship is so cool to watch. Just the two hooded cobras like cuddling each other and nestling, and the tail twitching, super cool. So we hooked up this camera. And dude, I swear they knew. Well, they just
cobras
knew.
are smart.
Like, what is that thing in the corner?
Cobras are smart.
They just knocked it down. Every time we put it up, they would not. Yeah, every time we put it in there, they would just knock it down. They'd be like, "That thing is looking at me," and they would just knock it over. So I got some cool cell phone video. What's that, Anthony?
No, they say cobras are like mind-blowingly intelligent.
I'll take your word for that.
Only some of them. I got a couple dummies. Yeah. Yeah, I got a couple dummies.
I was watching something about like king cobras, and they were saying how they almost had like a million sense of.
Hands down. So kings are a league of their own. I'll say with full gusto and confidence that the king cobra is hands down the smartest reptile.
Oh yeah, see.
Period. Yeah,
and it was like a National Geographic thing I was watching. It wasn't a bullshit YouTube clip. It was like a real deal documentary. They were showing how they can almost solve problems. They can think out a thought. They can, the things they do are just almost like an animal. Like it's pretty nuts.
Yeah, and that's what you see. You'll see more free handling and and hookless interaction on the internet with kings than you will any other venomous snake. And I don't condone free handling at all. I do not. But I do condone manual manipulation. And my friends and I talk about this all the time, is that there are times when you will have to get hands-on in a particular scenario, and you need to know how the body language of that snake is working, how the locomotion and the actual physical attributes of that snake is working, so that you can do it safely. That does not mean I'm going to sit there with a cobra on my neck petting its head. There's a big difference between the two. When you have a snake that's 10 foot plus and as tall as you are, with the rest of its body strewn across the floor, you're not using a hook. Like, you have to be hands-on. And that's when we talk about manual manipulation. But you'll see more king cobra interactions like that on the internet than you will any other venomous snake, because the king usually knows that person. And that person has worked with that animal for many, many years, if not its whole life,
tagging us
to the point where that person can get away with murder. And if any of us tried to do it, we'd be dead.
Definitely.
So
intelligent and intimidating.
So very, very, very intelligent animals. Crazy intelligent.
I watched. They had, it was like Indian guys that did the snake charming thing.
Yeah.
But he had cages in his backyard. They were literally his pets. They weren't like some wild animals. He would go outside every morning. He kept them in these baskets, but they were screened in pens. He could go out to any one of them and he would open them up and pet them like they were fucking rabbits. Like he was just touching the snakes. So it dawned on me then, and I didn't really think about it again until now, but like they literally knew him. Like those snakes knew that it wasn't food. They weren't just, they didn't just snap into a prey drive. Like they assessed the situation and knew what was going on.
Yeah, for sure. We had an Ashes cobra at Underground when we were teaching the classes back then. We had an Ashes cobra, and Ashes is the largest true cobra. This is a female, and she was probably 8 or 9 foot, and she was just piss and vinegar, but not with me. Me and my good buddy Henry. Honestly, I could have just taken her out with my hands. We never did, because we were good boys about it. But she was very, very calm, cool, and collected with us because we were calm, cool, and collected with her. But there was this one guy who was taking the class, getting hours, and she hated him. I have no idea why. She did not like him. And if I was all the way in the back of the store working in that area, not necessarily with her, just working that area, and that guy would come in the front door of the store, she would stand up and hood up out of the blue. And I'd be like, it's because he's here. And then he would walk in and she would just mean mug him the whole time. And again, dude, maybe we're anthropomorphizing this. Maybe we're putting our human spin on it. Yeah. But that snake definitively knew the difference between me and that guy.
I don't doubt it one bit.
Yeah.
Not even the littlest bit. I think they're, people, I also say this all the time, but people assume that animals are so dumb because they don't speak our language, right?
Exactly.
Like, they can't communicate with you. Got the audacity to think they're a dumb creature. 80% of these animals that are on this planet have been around millions of years before Homo sapiens, right?
Yeah.
It's super ignorant to think that the animals are just these dumb, simple-minded creatures. They just process, analyze, think, and communicate differently than we do.
You ever hear about the Chihuahua doing algebra? You ever hear that? So somebody came up with it a while ago. It was like, can geckos do algebra? And it's like, well, obviously they don't think like we do. They don't have the brain size. They don't have the same synapses, all that jazz, right? But you think this gecko is sitting on a branch, and it has to calculate in its mind how much muscle, energy, and speed, timing, and distance it has to do to jump and clear whatever it's going to jump over or jump through to land on its desired target. Now, again, they're geckos, so they're goofy. Sometimes they're going to flop, sometimes they're going to fall, but they don't rarely do it. It's usually calculated and precise, right? I mean, well, maybe not cresteds, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So are they doing the algebra in their head, working out that equation, or is it just dumb luck? I don't think so. I don't know if they're actually doing algebra, but again, that's the old joke is can a Chihuahua do, or can a lychee or whatever do algebra?
Have you ever seen a study on, I've seen it a bunch now, I even have it posted on my Instagram, but some doctor in Australia, she did a study with bearded dragons. They taught one bearded dragon how to open this gate and get to food, open a gate, flip a lock, open a gate, walk through a door, and get to, like, literally a complex combination of actions it had to do. They had another bearded dragon that never saw it. Couldn't figure it out for shit. They showed the fucking one that didn't do it a video of the bearded dragon that did do it. They showed it a video. The fucking thing walked right through it like it was never there.
That's wild.
I mean, it's mind blowing. You know,
that's crazy.
They were talking about how a bunch of studies were conducted back in the late 70s and early 80s on reptiles, and they never took into consideration the temperature that the reptiles were in. They kept them in these super subpar conditions, and they were super cold and not, warmed up to their normal thinking temperatures. And then they conducted these studies. You know, so it's not really like they're in their natural environment and their problem solving temperature. To be quite,
you know? That's wild. I would love to see that. That's awesome.
Started doing these new things, and I recorded it off of my phone, off of National Geographic on TV, where this doctor is doing this study. It's no bullshit, dude. They trained the one dragon to do this whole spiel. The other one never seen it, nothing. All they did was show that bearded dragon a video. This thing watched fucking TV, watched another bearded dragon do something, and then goes and does it.
Oh yeah,
it's wild, man. I'd love to see that. If you find it, you gotta share it, man. That's cool.
Out of like the hots you ever dealt with, what's like probably like the most difficult one you ever had to deal with? Yeah. Like whether it was at work or even your personal collection.
Most difficult?
Husbandry, like
you gotta like, go in terms of husbandry or just like overall handling.
Yeah.
Like the most pain in the ass getting them out of the enclosure, handling that kind of thing. Oh man, big kings are tough because you don't handle them; they handle you, and it's you're controlling the situation, but it's not so much that they're difficult; they're just giant, man. They're huge, and people think like, okay, it's a 7-foot king. 7 feet isn't that long. I've got a 15-foot retic. It's like, no, it's not the same, man. Like, it knows what's going on. It knows what you're going to do, and at the same time, it's way faster than you. So I'll say, just because I'm a short, stocky guy, like large kings, honestly, forest cobras are very, very difficult to work with because they're incredibly nimble. They stand up very tall. They have a very prehensile-like tail, and if you're not trained on how to approach it appropriately, it's gonna mess with you. Like not necessarily on purpose. Again, we're not saying that it has the ability to confuse you, right? This isn't the cartoon Jungle Book, but it's going to do everything in its arsenal to not stay on that snake hook and not be held by the tail and not go into the Rubbermaid trash can you're trying to put it into. But again, it all comes down to training. I don't think any snake is truly difficult. It's just, how well do you know the species? How well do you know that individual animal? How well are you trained to execute certain tasks at hand? We always say in venomous training, the 5 things, right? So clearly we know that snakes are more than capable of doing more than 5 things. But for simplistic sake, let's say snakes can only do 5 things, right? You don't know if the snake's going to do 1, if it's going to do 2, if it's going to do 1 and 2, if it's going to do a number 5, then a number 2. You have no idea. But if you train for all 5, then you're ready for anything. And there might be a 6th that you never knew about, but you still knew the first 5, so you're ready for anything at that point. The idea is, anytime we are removing or extracting an animal from its enclosure, we follow a laundry list of protocols before we ever unlock the cage. And guys that have been doing this a long time that are well versed in this, they're not going to say it out loud. They may not even say it in their own head, but they still did it. And if they didn't, then they're foolish and they're going to have an accident. They're going to have an issue. So I really feel like what's the most difficult snake is very anecdotal to the individual person. For me, I would say longer stuff because I'm short. You know, large kings, large forest cobras, large mambas. Dude, I had a West African green mamba that just didn't want to cooperate. And it's like, I wound up getting rid of it not because I was afraid of it, not because it was hard to keep per se. It was work. Every time I wanted to clean its cage. And it's like, it's not worth it. The animal clearly didn't want to be worked with by me. It didn't ride a hook. It wouldn't ride 2 hooks. It refused to use a trap box. It was just a pain in the butt. So I wound up giving it to a friend who specialized in mambas, and I'm pretty sure he still has it. That was like 10 years ago.
Really? My buddy Wild Bill on Instagram. Wild Bill's just got a mamba. He's got a bunch of mambas, but shit. I mean, every time I watch him, I'm nervous for him. I'm like, shit, that thing is just so fast. Like,
yeah. I think I'm not big on long snakes because
I feel that same way just about snakes in general.
So I don't know if that answered your question or not. So sorry if I skirted it.
7-foot snake is not really good.
Yeah. Both grew up watching Steve Irwin too. Tell me, just having this little conversation doesn't make you appreciate that man that much more. He could walk onto any fucking continent and touch an untrained wild snake and read that snake just about. I mean, it blows my mind. Even as a kid, I'd be like, damn, like that's not a pet. Like this dude just like rolled up on a rock and grabbed a king brown that's trying to, like he could read. I mean, it's a very unique talent. And I'm not saying he's the only one to have it, but to watch someone work with a feisty animal like that and not hurt the animal, right? When I was a kid, I'd catch copperheads. We used to fucking stick with a fork in them. We jab behind the head and we grab the fuckers, Like now, you get fucking blacklisted for this shit, So it's
I will say this. I'm a Steve Irwin fan. I know there's a lot of, now that he's gone, a lot of truth has come out to his practices and habits that were frowned upon. I will never diminish all that he's done. He was an asset. If it wasn't for him, half of us wouldn't be here. If not more than half of us wouldn't be here. But there is something to say that it's amazing how when you watch Steve Irwin as an adult, you never notice the sound effects.
I haven't, man. You know
why? You didn't notice that?
No, I haven't watched it.
If you watch it now, you'll hear the sound effects because it's very, very staged. And yes, he may have found that Eastern brown snake in the wild, and it may have been ornery, and he handled it like a pro because he was. But how many takes did they do before that? How tired was that snake? Did they do 30 takes before that one? You know what I'm saying? Like, and there's a lot of movie magic that goes into it. But I will tell this story. A friend of mine who did snakes for television wound up having Steve Irwin. They contracted him to bring snakes for Steve Irwin to do some show. I don't remember. This is a long time ago. And one of the snakes that they wanted was an inland taipan. And he said, yeah, sure, I got one. I'll bring it. And Steve Irwin looked at the snake in the bag before the show and said, nah, man, this isn't worth it. He's like, I figured you'd say that. He goes, yeah, this snake is not ready for this. This is not going to be good. This is too dangerous. Let's not do this. And he wound up not using the animal.
Oh, my ego
thought that was super honorable because there's a million other showboats out there that wouldn't have given a shit. Right, the ego. And that's why I say, like, although Steve Irwin had some stuff that we kind of frown upon nowadays, knowing, like, now that he's gone, God rest his soul, I give him all the credit in the world because, like I said, the man is the pinnacle of conservation, regardless of the off-camera practices and off-camera politics. But when you look at some of the show stuff, it's like, okay, how many takes was that? He didn't do that on the first take. You know what I mean? But again, I give him mad props because of stories like my friend's, where he could have whipped that snake out and showboated and got dangerous scenario, but he had the knowledge and the expertise to say, no, we're not using this one.
You said in like Florida, you got to get like 1,000 hours. Now, is there stuff? 1,000 hours, you're done, and it's up to you.
So no.
Okay.
So the license has evolved several times over the past 20 years. I could go through all the motions of how it was, but it used to be very attainable. It used to take the average person about 2 years to do it. Now it is virtually.
Don't want to do it.
How do I phrase this? They make it so hard that you give up. Yeah, and that's their goal. Their goal is to weed people out, and it's not going to stop people. People are going to still keep it illegally, but now they can throw the book at you. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? So when I first started getting my venomous hours, there was over 560 license holders in the state. Now there's less than 200.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the population has almost doubled. So it just goes to show you that they push and they push and they push, excuse me, to make it so difficult that you give up, that you don't want to. Right now, it is broken down into 4 categories of snakes: Gila monsters and beady lizards. They call it Heloderma, vipers, elapids, and colubrids. And you need 1,000 hours of each group, and then you get that endorsement. In the past, you used to have 1 letter of recommendation from someone that you trained with and another letter of recommendation from someone that just knows you did it. Now it's 2 letters from 2 license holders. At the same time, you used to be able to say, okay, I went to Underground Reptiles retail store on this date from this time to that time. It was 5 hours, and you'd log that 5 hours. No. Now they want to know, okay, at 4:05, I unlocked the cage. At 4:10, I put the snake back in the cage and changed the water. At 4:15, I locked the cage back up again. They want it broken down. And they're basically making it so hard that no one's going to do it. They actually invented a test to knock off some of the hours. And from what I gather, I've never taken the test, but from what I gather, the test is a joke, which has led to, in my personal opinion, it has led to a lot of people skirting the system and getting a license when they're not ready.
Yeah.
They're not, you know?
It's definitely not something people should play around with, man. And I'm all for, hate to say it, but,
it's life or death.
Do your little thing around what the government's doing, but something like this, I mean, we're not talking tax, right? Like, this isn't taxes we're getting. It's
right.
Life, even, it's something someone should really, you should want to learn, you should want to, out here, like where I'm in Connecticut, you go right over into Pennsylvania, no license, no nothing, buy whatever the fuck you want. No, you could keep whatever you want, no license required, free for all, total fucking free for all. And I don't know how they don't have a higher death toll, to be completely honest with you, but
well, it's also it's a big deal for Florida because anything that gets loose survives. Right? And that's what they're most afraid of. And it is, in my opinion, make it easier for how do I phrase this? The more people that keep it illegally, the higher risk you have of shit escaping. Yeah. Because they're not trained, because they don't care. They don't have the passion. They didn't spend 4 years of their life training for this. No. I had a friend who, and here's the other thing too, is it's county for county inspected, right? So my inspector is a different guy. My investigator is a different guy than the Dade County one, because it's an investigator per each area. I had a guy who trained for 4 years and finally got enough hours. And then the state changed the law and said, no. It has to be a room within a room with no external doorways.
That's crazy.
So he's screwed. He doesn't have a room within a room. So after 4 years of training, he said, you know what? I'm not moving my house. I'm not moving my family. I'm not building an outbuilding with a double door like a Bengal tiger. That's not happening. So he didn't get his license. That's it. He appreciates the experiences that he had and all that he learned and got to interact with. And he still has friends that keep venomous. So if he really gets an itch and he wants to go play with some stuff and interact with some stuff, he can. But they make it very, very difficult.
Do you have to take refresher courses or like refresher?
No, but you're inspected every year. And then they keep tabs on inventory coming in, going out, births, deaths, new acquisitions, dispositions. And then anytime you bring something into the state of Florida, people don't realize this, but Florida has its own Florida import permit. It's completely free, but you have to do it. So most people don't know this. They're just FedExing, your corn snake that you bought on Morph Market to your house. Well, technically, you were supposed to do an import permit.
I watched a YouTube video with flawless crested geckos. They breed ball pythons too. But there's some like the Carolinas or Virginia. And they were talking about how they wanted to go vend a big show down in Daytona. And they got phoned and canceled because they didn't have this import thing just to bring their things across state lines. So they have to go whole spiel to get this permit just so they could sell their fucking crested geckos in Florida.
You're correct. Yep. And that the sole purpose of that
Yeah.
is so the state can keep track of you so that they have someone to blame if something happens. That's the only reason. That's the only reason.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Florida is herpetoculture mecca.
Yeah.
All the importers, all the breeders, like it all stemmed from the 70s and 80s in Florida. Well,
Sure.
Some of this stuff has been here for generations. The state doesn't know that. They have no idea, but they're trying to learn it now.
No.
So, and they're very vague on what you can and cannot and how you can and can list things. Like, you know, if I'm a breeder, do I put the species that I breed or do I put the individual animals that I have? Do they need to know that I have 5 carpet pythons or can I just put carpet python? And they're not going to tell you this because they want you to just guess and figure it out, and they can tell you how you made a mistake.
Yeah.
So as much as I'm all for regulation in a safety way and a discouraging way from people that say, yeah, bro, I want a pet cobra, bro. Like, I'm all about regulation in that regard. It's just, it's a horrible thing when you give them an inch and they take a mile.
Absolutely. That's what I get from FWC in general. Is like they just thrive on this power, this trump card that they can go tell anybody what you can and cannot do. Half of these guys that I've watched them on like little clips go into some of these guys' collections to do their checks and whatnot. They wouldn't know. They don't know a third of what these fucking guys doing it right or keeping and how they're doing it. You couldn't tell this kid fucking nothing. But yeah, you're going in there and telling him how and what to do, right? Like he's obviously got the situation under control. Everything's under lock and key. Everything's labeled. Everything's, you know, all done up the right way. And then they still will just look for some way to throw their badge around. It's
Well, and here's the kicker too. So I'll say this real quick. I am not anti-FWC. I respect the FWC. I have friends that are FWC officers, and for the most part, they're doing a great job. The problem is that they usually won't hire animal people like us because it's the same reason why they typically don't hire hunters or fishermen, because they don't want the guy to say, hey, man, that's a great looking mahi-mahi, but hey, it's an inch too short. Be careful next time. But dude, I saw you fight that fish. That was a hell of a reel. Like, you did a great job,
sense.
buddy.
Yeah.
No, they want the guy that says that's an inch short. Now I get to take your boat. And what people don't realize is that the FWC in Florida is state law enforcement. They are the highest form of law enforcement in the state. So if you're speeding on I-95, they can pull you over. If you're sitting in a parking lot dealing drugs, they can arrest you. If you're out in nature and you litter, they can not only take all of your assets within the vehicle and seize them, they can seize the vehicle itself. So there is a power trip there, but at the same time, most of the guys that are out in the field, not in Tallahassee, not the corporate people, not the construction people, the actual cops on the street and in the boats, they're good dudes, man. They're doing work. They're protecting the flora and fauna. So I'm all about it, man. I'm anti-poacher. I'm pro-FWC, but it bothers me when a uneducated clerk in the Capitol tells me that I can't keep something because the scientific name changed.
Yeah.
That bothers me. You know what I mean? You have no idea my expertise. You have no idea what I do or how I do it. For a while, family of sea snakes was on the venomous application. Well, sea snakes are illegal in Florida. They've always been illegal. They were never allowed. And for good reason, because they don't want that shit getting loose. And I could totally respect that. And no one keeps sea snakes because they're really hard to keep in captivity. Imagine having a giant saltwater fish tank with no fish, just the snake. It's incredibly difficult. That's why zoos don't do it. Well, I got a little frisky. So I put sea snake. They freaked. Do you have them? Have you ever had them? Where did you get them from? Have you had this on your license before?
I just want to see your
Made you
reaction.
apply
That's
for
all
that?
it
I
was.
was like, whoa. I don't have them. I've never had them. I'm not going to have them.
Yeah.
But no, I wanted to get that endorsement on my license. Why not?
Oh yeah.
Really?
All right.
That'd be cool. Why not?
Yeah, why not? Right. So, but yeah, they made it so difficult that guys and gals don't want to do it. And I understand the reasoning. I just don't agree with the way they went about it.
Yeah,
So.
I do too. More after talking to you, I do. You know, so many people are so spontaneous. They don't think about it. You know, they just want to do something and go. I mean, they should make it something that's, you know, takes effort to achieve. You know,
Yeah.
but there should be an end. You know, there should be a reward, if you will. Like, you've done this work. You've put your time in. You've, you know, battled the headwinds. Here you go.
Yeah, they don't care. And now the newest laws that came out last year are by far the worst. It basically says that any violation is grounds for revocation. So if I get a misdemeanor citation because I have a dirty cage, they can revoke my license and seize my animals, which I think is very, very bad. At the same time, any possession of a venomous reptile without a license in the state of Florida is a felony. So you can lose your entire livelihood if you caught a pygmy rattlesnake in your backyard and put it in a terrarium. You're done. You're a felon.
Even with native species, huh?
Even with native species. So they actually changed the law, and it was very vague. It was very gray, to basically that a native venomous species you may interact with for the well-being of the species. So like if there's an eastern diamondback on the road and it's going to get waffled by a truck and you get out with your snake hook and you scoot it off the road with your snake hook, you're not breaking the law. Yeah. But if you knowingly take that diamondback, put it in a snake bag, bring it home and put it in a terrarium, now you're a felon, which is crazy to me.
Right?
Yeah. You know, there's people doing way worse out there in the world than somebody keeping a pet snake.
You ain't lying.
Oh, no, you're good. You know, I mean, like I said, we're coming up at the end anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Sorry to get dark on you with all this FWC stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I'm good.
People should hear this stuff. I mean, this is...
And I can't convey it enough. Like, I'm not anti-FWC. Like, me and my investigator, my inspector, like, we're on great terms. He used to do he used to be Port Authority for import-export. So he knows about venomous. He knows about reptiles. Like, he's a stand-up guy in that regard. But I know that if I make a mistake,
I mean, he's going to clean. That's all that matters.
Because I made a mistake.
Yeah.
That's just it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
all right. So we almost at 2.5 hours. So
transparency.
Phil, how can everybody get a hold of you on all your platforms?
So the easiest way to find me is Instagram. It's knobtails.ig. We have 2 podcasts going right now. I've got 2 podcasts going right now. One is Snakes and Stogies with my co-host Justin Smith on the Herpetoculture Network. We do that every Monday night at 9 p.m. East Coast time. And you can find that on the Herpetoculture Network on every podcast platform. And then I also have a show with my co-host Nipper Reed called Venom Exchange Radio. It is as far as I know, the only venomous-centric podcast out there right now. That is on its nice, excellent, rock and roll. Toot my own horn there a little bit. You can find that on every podcast platform. Venom Exchange Radio. There's actually going to be a new episode. I'm probably going to do it tonight, actually. So I'll drop that. Well, the listeners now, it'll already be out because I know this isn't airing tonight, but yeah, Venom Exchange Radio. We try to put one episode out a month. It's just difficult. Nipper's in London. I'm in Florida. It's time difference, so we try to do it. But that's the easiest way to do it. So the Herpetoculture Network, Snakes and Stogies every Monday night, and the Venom Exchange Radio.
Hey,
also,
there you go.
Selfless plug, venomexchangeradio.com. Check that out too.
There you go, guys. Check him out, man. You're talking to one of the best doing it right now, man. This guy has a passion like no other, man. Check him out on all his platforms. You're gonna want to. You're gonna want to listen to it, man. I watched a couple episodes of Snakes and Stogies, and it's
definitely.
If you're a man,
appreciate you coming on, talking some knobtails, talking some hot.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Definitely appreciate you coming on.
It was a blast, man.
Yeah, for real. All right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hey, man. Thank you, guys. The pleasure's all mine.